tarde a todos, bem-vindos, aos que estão já aqui dentro, aos que nos acompanham em casa e também aos que estão ainda lá fora, um bocadinho atrasados à espera. Pronto, meu nome é Diogo Cravalheira, como provavelmente alguns de vós saberão, sou Head of Communications da APREN. Damos agora início à Portugal Renewable Energy Summit 2021, a conferência anual da APREN focada no grande tema das renováveis enquanto motor da recuperação económica. A conferência deste ano retoma uma forma mais próxima do habitual, abrindo a plateia a toda a assistência, mas está simultaneamente configurada de maneira a permitir que a assistência participe online. A nossa conferência vai contar com as intervenções de alguns dos principais especialistas nacionais e internacionais na área das energias renováveis e tem programados 8 painéis para o debate sobre as principais questões que se colocam ao setor. Teremos igualmente a cerimónia de atribuição do Prémio APREN 2021, com o propósito principal de divulgar dissertações académicas relacionadas com a eletricidade de origem renovável. Antes de mais, gostaria de partilhar algumas informações práticas. A conferência tem tradução simultânea para inglês e nos painéis e intervenções que se realizam em inglês, haverá tradução simultânea para português. Para tal, bastará clicar no botão virtual que surge no display da plataforma Zoom. Good morning to all our guests that do not speak Portuguese. Please bear in mind that you can access simultaneous translation into English language via Zoom platform. It's very easy, you just need to click on the provided dots on the display. Thank you. Voltando ao português, aproveito ainda para informar que podem levantar questões, fazendo chegar as vossas dúvidas a partir de onde estiverem, nos locais de trabalho, em casa e também aqui na plateia, com recurso à plataforma Slido. O link de acesso do Slido é este que podem ver aqui no ecrã e tem também um QR Code nos vossos pads, para quem está aqui presente. As perguntas a formular e enviar são exclusivamente dedicadas aos temas que estiverem em debate, em cada momento, e serão encaminhadas aos respectivos moderadores, após uma seleção feita na plataforma através de votação interativa da assistência. Quaisquer questões técnicas ou dúvidas sobre como se ligar a nós, assistir e participar devem ser-nos colocadas através de e-mail ou de uma chamada telefónica, e os contactos vão aparecer aqui. Convidamos-vos então, nestes próximos 3 dias, a debater os vários aspectos e abordagens que decorrem do tema central da conferência, renováveis, motor da recuperação económica. Antes de chamar Pedro Amaral Jorge, o CEO da APREN, para dar início aos trabalhos, relembro rapidamente o programa da tarde. Depois que concluímos a sessão de abertura, teremos 3 painéis de debate. O primeiro, que abre com um keynote speech da Comissária Europeia para a Energia, centra-se no Fit for 55 e no quadro da nova ambição europeia para a redução das emissões de carbono em 55% até 2030. Cerca das 3h15, contamos abrir o segundo painel dedicado ao novo enquadramento das renováveis e da questão de saber se será suficiente para o cumprimento das metas. Já depois das 5 da tarde, antes de terminar o programa, abrimos um painel de debate sobre a evolução dos preços da eletricidade no mercado ibérico. E depois desta breve apresentação do programa da tarde, peço então a Pedro Amaral Jorge, CEO da APREN, que faça as honras de abertura. Pedro, se puder juntar a nós.
Boa tarde a todos, muito bem-vindos. Acho que estamos a dizer algumas dificuldades aí com o registro, mas temos convidados internacionais todos em palco e vamos ter que dar início. Começo por desejar boa tarde a todos aos que nos acompanham aqui e a todas, na Culturgest e remotamente pela emissão que temos em streaming. Sejam muito bem-vindos à conferência anual da APREN, Portugal Renewable Summit Energy, na edição de 2021. A edição deste ano vai estar focada no tema Renováveis, motor da recuperação económica, recuperação esta da União Europeia, da Península Ibérica e de Portugal, abordando hoje o pacote legislativo do Fit for 55, os auxílios de Estado que são permitidos pela Comissão Europeia e o mercado ibérico de eletricidade. Teremos um dia e meio de conferência em que no primeiro dia, hoje, abordaremos os temas transversais à União Europeia e ao espaço ibérico e no segundo dia focar-nos-emos em Portugal. A conferência da APREN ocorre em data que coincide com a realização da COP26, à qual infelizmente Rússia, Brasil e China decidiram não comparecer. Relembro que a título de enquadramento, que a COP tem 4 grandes objetivos e aqui eu irei mencioná-los na língua original para não desvirtuar na tradução. Secure global net by mid-20th century and keep 1.5 degrees within reach, adapt and protect communities and natural habitats, mobilize finance and work together to deliver. China e Índia falham no compromisso da neutralidade climática em 2050, tendo colocado esses objetivos em 2060 e 2070, respectivamente, o que não são boas notícias e que, na minha opinião, requerem uma atuação concertada entre a União Europeia e os Estados Unidos da América em termos de clima, de industrialização e de comércio, com a missão óbvia de redução das emissões dos gases com efeito de estufa em linha com aquilo que tinha sido definido nos Objetivos do Acordo de Paris em 2015. A Europa, por sua vez, está a reforçar as metas. As medidas e as políticas para alcançar a neutralidade climática em 2050, tendo constituído o mais importante marco de políticas, o referido Fit for 55, como uma ferramenta-chave para levar a cabo a implementação do European Green Deal. O pacote Fit for 55, apresentado pela Comissão Europeia, é um conjunto de propostas legislativas para a Europa a 27, que enquadra políticas para o clima, para a energia, que visam apoiar, incentivar e acelerar a concretização do Pacto Ecológico Europeu. Perdão. A União Europeia comprometeu-se a ser o primeiro continente a nível global a alcançar a neutralidade climática até 2050. A implementação de todas estas medidas implica uma significativa e acentuada transformação do nosso modo de vida, desde como produzimos eletricidade, que tipo de energia e matérias-primas consumimos, como nos transportamos e deslocamos, como consumimos menos energia em nossas casas e como gerimos e administramos o nosso território, quer na parte terrestre, quer na parte marítima. Para alcançar a neutralidade climática em apenas 3 décadas, a União Europeia aumentou a sua meta de redução de gases de efeito de estufa a alcançar em 2030, dos iniciais 40% para 55% quando comparados com as emissões de 1990. O pacote Fit for 55, para além de descrever as medidas e ações que os Estados-membros têm de implementar para alcançar a meta de redução de emissões desses mesmos 55%, indica também que medidas podem os Estados-membros individualmente implementar a nível nacional, em linha com o Pacto Ecológico Europeu. Em termos de energia, o Fit for 55, através da revisão da Directive das Renováveis 2, a nova RED 3, estabelece metas mais ambiciosas e exigentes para 2030, ou seja, 40% da meta de energias renováveis no consumo final de energia, anteriormente 32%, e a meta de eficiência energética para o consumo primário, anteriormente 32,5% e agora 39%, e, 36% para o consumo final de energia. A meta de 40% é o limite superior da faixa proposta pelo Plano das Metas Climáticas, que consideramos, obviamente, muito positivo. No entanto, a RED 3 fica aquém daquilo que seria desejável, na minha opinião, ao não propor metas vinculativas ao nível dos Estados-membros, mas apenas vinculativa no conjunto da Europa a 27. Todas estas metas requerem um aumento massivo de instalação de mais e nova potência renovável para a produção de eletricidade. Este aumento de capacidade instalada será transversal a todas as tecnologias, ou seja, vamos ter eletrificação direta e indireta dos consumos de energia com recursos às diferentes fontes renováveis, o que terá que ser complementado, obviamente, com sistemas de armazenamento de curta e de longa duração e com mecanismos de gestão da flexibilidade do consumo. A Comissão Europeia apresentou também uma série de estratégias absolutamente essenciais para acelerar a transição energética, das quais destaco a estratégia de energia renovável offshore, como uma nova utilização territorial, a estratégia de reindustrialização da União Europeia, que é um tema que vai permitir, obviamente, captar investimento para que consigamos aumentar o investimento não só no setor elétrico e energético, mas também nos eletrointensivos no espaço europeu, a estratégia de integração do sistema energético e, obviamente, as estratégias de produção de hidrogênio verde para aquelas questões em que a eletrificação direta não é possível e teremos que utilizar a eletrificação indireta. Com as propostas e metas enunciadas, a Comissão Europeia apresenta um conjunto de instrumentos legislativos necessários, embora, na minha opinião, não suficientes, para cumprir os objetivos acordados na Lei Europeia do Clima e transformar radicalmente a nossa economia e a nossa sociedade com vista a um futuro justo, coeso, verde, obviamente sustentável e expectavelmente próspero. Relembro que os Estados-membros não podem esquecer que esta transformação ocorra. É fundamental apoiar e ajudar os cidadãos a financiar investimentos em eficiência energética, em novos sistemas de aquecimento e refrigeração e na mobilidade, obviamente eletrificados com energia a partir de fontes renováveis. Todas essas propostas estão integradas e serão complementares. Tal como afirma a Comissão Europeia, precisamos deste pacote equilibrado e das receitas que este pacote gera para garantir uma transição que torne a Europa justa, ecológica e competitiva, partilhando responsabilidades de forma solidária e justa entre os diferentes setores de atividade e os Estados-membros, prestando, sempre que necessário, apoio adicional. Para a Comissão Europeia, os benefícios de agir agora para proteger as pessoas e o planeta são claros e simples. ar mais limpo, cidades mais frescas e verdes, cidadãos mais saudáveis, menor consumo de energia e menores faturas de eletricidade e energia, geração de emprego e desenvolvimento de tecnologias e criação de oportunidades industriais na Europa. Mais espaço para a natureza e um planeta mais saudável para entregar às gerações futuras como um modelo de desenvolvimento socioeconómico sustentável e, por conseguinte, robusto e resiliente. O desafio do cerne da transição verde da Europa é garantir que os benefícios e as oportunidades que acompanham estão disponíveis para todos o mais rápida e justamente possível. Ao utilizar os diferentes instrumentos políticos disponíveis ao nível da União Europeia, podemos garantir que o ritmo de mudança seja o suficiente, mas que tenda a não ser demasiado disruptivo. Devem ser combatidos veementemente a criação de monopólios ou oligopólios energéticos no espaço da União Europeia. A Presidente da Comissão Europeia, Ursula von der Leyen, afirmou que a economia dos combustíveis fósseis atingiu o seu limite. Acentuou que pretende deixar a próxima geração com um planeta saudável e com bons empregos e o referido crescimento e desenvolvimento socioeconómico que não prejudica a natureza, preserva a biodiversidade e, obviamente, assegure o restauro dos ecossistemas selvagens. O European Green Deal é a estratégia europeia de crescimento rumo a uma economia descarbonizada. Repito, a Europa foi o primeiro continente a declarar a neutralidade carbónica em 2050, Portugal foi o primeiro país e foi também os primeiros a apresentar um roadmap concreto. A Europa define e declara políticas climáticas através da inovação, do investimento e da compensação social. E citando, como afirma o vice-presidente executivo do European Green Deal, Frans Timmermans, esta é a década decisiva no combate às alterações climáticas e da biodiversidade. A União Europeia definiu metas ambiciosas e o pacote Fit for 55 define como podemos cumpri-las. Alcançar um futuro verde e saudável para todos exigirá de esforços consideráveis em todos os setores e em todos os Estados-membros. Agrupados e devidamente integrados, estes conjuntos de propostas apresentadas pela Comissão Europeia permitirão impulsionar e incentivar as mudanças necessárias que permitirão aos cidadãos experimentarem os benefícios da ação climática, do combate à ação climática o mais rapidamente possível, apoiando e nunca esquecendo, especialmente as famílias mais vulneráveis. Agradeço a vossa disponibilidade para participar neste evento anual da APREN. Espero que os temas a abordar nestes 2 dias vos sejam úteis e ajudem a nossa caminhada rumo à neutralidade climática em 2050, com os olhos postos nas metas que, incontornavelmente, há que alcançar em 2030. Quero também, desde já, agradecer à equipa da APREN que tornou possível mais esta edição deste evento, sem a qual nada disto teria sido execuível. Para eles, o meu reconhecimento pelo trabalho até aqui realizado, votos de boa sorte para os 2 dias que seguirão. Vamos dar o início aos trabalhos e, para isso, passo novamente a palavra ao Diogo. Diogo, por favor.
Pedro, os trabalhos estão então abertos. Avançamos então para o primeiro grande tema que faz foco na nova ambição europeia Fit for 55. Mas antes de iniciarmos o debate, chamo Kadri Simpson, a Comissária Europeia da Energia, que já está remotamente connosco. Good afternoon, Kadri. Thank you for joining us. Please proceed.
Thank you. Well, I'm working with 2 computers at the same time, so that's why some misunderstanding. But good afternoon. The second year I am speaking in front of the Portugal Renewable Energy Summit. And I'm sorry I can't be with you in person, but having the chance to say a few words is a great opportunity on such an important topic. And the topic is to promote renewable energy. One of the greatest challenges our society faces today is moving away from fossil fuels and towards a green and sustainable energy system. And the EU Green Deal is guiding our work in this direction. It's our targets for a climate neutral Europe by 2050. And since its adoption, with every ambitious strategy we have launched in the energy portfolio, we are sending a clear signal that renewable energy is a major pillar of that ambition. And I see it as a golden thread running through each of the strategies. Our energy system integration strategy aims to shape a system that is largely renewables based, Our hydrogen strategy holds renewable hydrogen as a priority, and that will only be possible with mainly solar and wind energy in its production. And for our renovation wave, decarbonizing our buildings is a must. So integrating renewables on site, like solar rooftop panels, is a tenet of the strategy. And of course, when it comes to our offshore renewable energy strategy, it goes without saying that there is huge potential for emerging technologies in floating offshore. You are pioneers in Portugal with the Wind Float Atlantic project. You are hosts of the first floating wind farm installed in the EU. Ladies and gentlemen, the road to 2050 also has one very significant pit stop on the way. This is 2030, because success by mid-century will only see the light if we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 55% already in the next 10 years. And European Union has always shown global leadership in energy and climate policies, adopting our first renewable targets already in 2009. And in July, we launched the largest legislative and policy package to date to help us move closer to climate neutrality. And it was imperative to revise our Renewable Energy Directive and bring it in line with our newer, more ambitious targets. Concretely, we are proposing to double the current renewables share in the EU. So it was planned to be 20 by 2020, and now we are proposing that by 2030, it has to reach 40% of our final energy consumption in just a decade. So going to 40% is ambitious, but at the same time, it is doable. And when it comes to deployment, it also means we will need all sources of sustainable renewable energy. Our projections suggest that solar power capacities will need to increase to over 400 gigawatts. This is more than threefold compared to 2020. Onshore wind will grow almost 2.5 times to close to 400 gigawatts. And offshore wind capacities, these are expected to grow the fastest, over 5 times compared to 2020, up to 90 gigawatts. And all of these increases in production capacity, all of these are enormous. Although these positive signals should give the green light to strengthen our renewables industry and to grow it and to benefit from the huge job creation potential we are already seeing. Another point I want to make today is about ensuring that practical and legal barriers are addressed. Administrative issues and insufficient spatial planning can lead to drawn out and expensive permitting procedures across many member states. And looking at how member states grant permits is only one side of the coin. We also need to boost investments and power purchase agreements and cross-border cooperation. And grid connections are also a potential pitfall. I recognize all of these issues as standing in the way of success for renewables, and we are tackling it. The current Renewable Energy Directive introduced new requirements on permitting, while the revised directive encourages member states to go even further in coordination and in the allocation of resources to the right authorities. And in the next few months, we are focusing on the full implementation of the existing provisions. Only in this way we can help project promoters tackle the issues they are facing on the ground. And we also think a benchmark of good practices needs to be proposed for the delays in permits being granted. So we plan to issue a full set of guidance of good practices next year. And this is already announced in the Commission work program for 2022. And third and finally, on this path to 2050, I want to mention the opportunity, because scaling up our renewable capacity is a necessity for the climate. And it's also an important part of rebuilding our economy post-COVID. There is a massive growth opportunity on our hands and an opportunity that needs to be seized. In the EU, we do have brilliant minds, and we do have world-class research institutions and highly skilled workforce and solid existing industry players. All of them together, they will form a basis for a strong future for European supply chain. And we are also leaders in solar and offshore wind technologies and research and development for those. And we also host some of the most advanced companies along the value chain. So that's why we need to make sure we choose the right path and build on our potential and avoid falling behind. And we are competitive downstream in the value chain, and I'm also proud to see that equipment manufacturing has a strong place in Europe. So taken together, we can see that we are fighting for a leading position in renewables. There is great potential to take our industry even further, and we are ready to bring more structure to the renewable industry and support the role of the industry can play in achieving our climate objectives, both for 2030 and 2050. So in this regard, your conference is an important part of that. So ladies and gentlemen, these were my thoughts on the road ahead for renewables in the next 3 decades. And our energy system is, of course, undergoing a profound transformation. And we are preparing the EU for climate neutrality, but also increasing our independence from fossil fuels and price volatility. And I believe that the Green Deal provides long-lasting solutions to Europe's energy challenge, more renewables and improved energy efficiency. So with that, I wish you an excellent conference today and hopefully very fruitful discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you for your time. So, em português primeiro.
Sorry. Thank you very much to Kadri Simpson for sharing the European Commission views and perspectives to achieve the 55% reduction on carbon emissions by 2030. Antes de abrirmos o debate, convido todos aqui no Cultura Gesto ou remotamente a colocar as vossas questões através da plataforma Slido. As perguntas serão selecionadas por votação, sendo escolhidas as mais referidas. Questões não relacionadas com o debate não serão consideradas. Ao longo da conferência, será também convidado a participar em várias sondagens de opinião. Os resultados serão apresentados no final do dia. Aproveito desde já para lançar a primeira sondagem, para averiguar junto de todos os participantes quais as 2 melhores medidas propostas pelo pacote europeu Fit for 55. Poderão aceder à sondagem via a plataforma Slido ou diretamente no website e votar nas 2 opções com que mais se identificam. Os resultados serão apresentados no final do primeiro painel. Abrimos então o debate sobre a aplicabilidade do Fit for 55 em Portugal e temos connosco eurodeputadas e eurodeputados, Graça Carvalho, Carlos Zorrinho, Marisa Matias, Nuno Melo e Sandra Pereira. A moderação pertence a Pedro Amaral Jorge. Pedro, força.
Muito boa tarde a todos. Obrigado pela vossa disponibilidade para estar connosco hoje aqui, mesmo que virtualmente. Agradecer reforçadamente aos repetentes, que cá estão desde o ano passado também. Temos entre nós representantes portugueses no Parlamento Europeu, que têm um papel determinante no impulsionar de toda esta transição energética até 2030. E eu, sem mais delongas, iria propor-vos que nós organizássemos o painel em ouvir de vós uma opinião que tem que ser dada entre 3 a 4 minutos para cada uma das questões que eu vou colocar. E a primeira questão que eu iria colocar, e ia pedir, só por uma questão de organização, porque é mais difícil isto remoto do que presencial, que a ordem de resposta fosse o Dr. Carlos Rosinho, a professora Graça Carvalho, a doutora Marisa Matias, o Dr. Nuno Melo e a doutora Sandra Pereira, para que nós consigamos ouvir as vossas opiniões relativamente a este ponto. E na primeira pergunta, a questão está relacionada com o seguinte. O pacote Fit for 55 da Comissão Europeia representa provavelmente o conjunto mais ambicioso de propostas legislativas alguma vez apresentadas no domínio da energia e das alterações climáticas. Qual a vossa visão em relação a este pacote, desde o seu nível de ambição e a sua aplicabilidade em Portugal, concretamente, no desenvolvimento de tudo o que tem que ser feito de sustentabilidade e económica? Dr. Carlos Zorrinho, por favor.
Muito obrigado. Em primeiro lugar, queria agradecer o convite, cumprimentar o moderador e também CEO da APREN, Pedro Amaral Jorge, saudar os meus colegas de painel, todos os participantes. Num tempo de tantas summits, esta summit é uma summit de facto muito, muito importante. Eu considero que este pacote 54-55 é um pacote que tem que ser enquadrado, como referiu também a Comissária, num conjunto de outras ações legislativas e também vem na sequência do pacote das energias limpas. E a ambição é adequada. E é adequada porque não pode ser outra. Não pode ser outra por duas razões fundamentais. Em primeiro lugar, porque a União Europeia é, de facto, a potência global mais dependente energeticamente. Ainda recentemente, nós sentimos o que significa essa dependência energética que nos retira capacidade de poder competir e de poder ter autonomia estratégica. Se há uma área em que se aplica o conceito de autonomia estratégica, esta área da energia é fundamental. E, por outro lado, esta ameaça, digamos, é ao mesmo tempo uma oportunidade, porque nós só temos possibilidade de ultrapassar esse déficit e essa dificuldade que temos se investirmos fortemente nas energias limpas, se investirmos fortemente nas energias renováveis e se investirmos fortemente na descarbonização. E por isso a ambição é a ambição necessária, é a ambição realista e é a ambição que tem que ser obtida. Mas há uma questão fundamental, e para usar os meus 3 minutos também está quase a ser esgotados. Nós temos a base jurídica, nós temos a base financeira, mas este pacote, para ter sucesso, tem que ter uma outra componente determinante. É que ele tem que ser percebido pelas pessoas como algo de positivo para elas. Não pode ser um pacote top-down, não pode ser um pacote imposto a partir da base jurídica, ou mesmo através dos pacotes financeiros. Eles são muito importantes, sem eles nada se faz. Mas tem fundamentalmente que ter a vontade das pessoas. E a vontade das pessoas pode até ultrapassar, e está a ultrapassar a reação de muitos Estados, e alguns Estados na União Europeia que têm colocado algumas dificuldades. E por isso, a transição, a aplicação deste pacote tem que ser justo, tem que incluir incentivos às famílias, tem que incluir incentivos às empresas, tem que incluir uma sincronização clara entre aquilo que é a transição e aquilo que é as componentes de compensação da transição. A transição justa não significa apenas que vamos gastar hoje ou que alguns vão ser prejudicados hoje para beneficiarmos todos amanhã. Ok, esse é um discurso que é verdadeiro, temos que fazer sacrifícios hoje para ganharmos todos amanhã, mas em concreto, aqueles que fazem sacrifícios agora também têm que ser beneficiados agora. E essa é a questão-chave para que este objetivo, que é absolutamente fundamental para a União Europeia e para o mundo, possa ser obtido com sucesso.
Dr. Carlos Rinho, muito obrigado pela sua intervenção. Professora Maria Graça Carvalho, passava-lhe a palavra.
Muito boa tarde. Para já queria agradecer o amável convite à APREN, queria cumprimentar o moderador e os meus colegas de painel e diria que este pacote do Fit for 55 é um pacote complexo, elaborado, ambicioso. Precisamos de ser ambiciosos neste momento na luta contra as alterações climáticas e de dar o exemplo, e a Europa tem feito isso. No entanto, temos, e o meu grupo político tem algumas críticas a fazer a este pacote, mas que neste momento o pacote está no Parlamento Europeu e, portanto, é agora a hora do Parlamento Europeu. Até aqui foi a hora da Comissão que propôs a proposta inicial, mas agora a partir de agora, nos próximos meses, o papel do Parlamento Europeu melhorar este pacote. E as nossas principais críticas é que este pacote tem pouca atenção à acessibilidade financeira ao custo da energia. Se, por exemplo, compararmos com alguns outros, com as políticas dos Estados Unidos, em que muito dos objetivos é diminuir o custo do solar em 10 anos de 60%, portanto nós não temos essa preocupação e isso falta a este pacote e poderá ser um dos problemas o custo da energia nesta transição energética. Portanto, essa é uma das nossas críticas. A outra crítica tem pouca relação com o estado da arte das tecnologias existentes. E temos que ter uma maior ligação entre o pacote em si, os objetivos e os meios que temos para atingir esses objetivos. Sabemos que em 9 anos, porque a maior parte dos objetivos são para 2030, as tecnologias têm que ser muito as tecnologias existentes ou que estão perto do mercado, não há muito tempo para desenvolver novas tecnologias, mas mesmo assim penso que deveríamos ter mais atenção à aplicação concreta e pragmática da aplicabilidade das tecnologias e das soluções para chegar às metas a que nos propomos. Em relação a Portugal, que também teremos principalmente nos transportes e nos edifícios, será talvez os setores com maior dificuldade na aplicabilidade do pacote. Há um ponto positivo no pacote, o pacote, em relação a pacotes anteriores, distribui mais o peso desta transição energética, que no passado foi muito feito na indústria e na produção de energia, e na produção de eletricidade. Neste momento, olha para vários setores da sociedade, como eu já disse, os transportes, os edifícios, mas também a agricultura, não na forma ainda que deveria ser olhado, mas já começa a olhar também nas emissões da agricultura e, portanto, distribui mais o esforço a fazer por cada um dos setores da sociedade, e isso é um ponto positivo. Mas, concluindo, ambicioso, interessante, esperamos é que maior atenção à parte económica do pacote, à sua feasibilidade, e também que não acarrete muita burocracia, principalmente para as famílias e para as pequenas e médias empresas.
Doutora Mira Garça Carvalho, muito obrigado por esse seu comentário. Doutora Marisa Matias, passava-lhe a palavra para ouvirmos a sua opinião.
Muito obrigada. Quero também começar por agradecer o convite para participar e cumprimentar os meus e as minhas colegas e todas as pessoas que estão a participar neste debate. De forma o mais sucinta que posso, creio que nós não temos muita alternativa a não ser ter uma proposta legislativa abrangente do ponto de vista da resposta à emergência climática e a resposta que precisa de ser, obviamente, urgente, porque nós não temos tempo nem condições para continuar no modelo de desenvolvimento que temos tido até agora e, portanto, a forma como olhamos para 2030 é já ali e nós precisamos dar esses passos. Agora, em relação a esta proposta legislativa em concreto, como disse, nós queremos ter uma lei do clima que seja concretizável, precisamos de ter esta abrangência legislativa. Eu creio que uma das partes positivas desta proposta é que lida pela primeira vez com a complexidade do que é uma resposta à emergência climática, mas lida de uma forma desigual e, do meu ponto de vista, não suficiente. Nós sabemos que na União Europeia até aqui houve 3 ramos principais, digamos assim, de política no sentido da redução das emissões. Uma delas, os mecanismos de ETS, né, das emissões de carbono, a outra, os mecanismos e os regulamentos do effort sharing, ou seja, da partilha de riscos, chamemos-lhe assim, de esforço, partilha de esforço, que se a questão das emissões de carbono normalmente estão mais ligadas, ou já estiveram sempre mais ligadas aos setores da indústria e da energia, as políticas relacionadas com o effort sharing estão mais relacionadas com os transportes, com as infraestruturas, com a agricultura, com os resíduos, enfim, com os setores, na realidade, que são os mais responsáveis pelas emissões de carbono e que têm mais a ver com aquilo que é a nossa vida concreta, e depois um terceiro pilar que tem a ver com os usos das terras e das florestas, o Land Use Change and Forestry, o LULUCF. Esta proposta do Fit for 55, de certa forma, tenta abarcar estas dimensões e eu creio que isso é positivo. Mas como é que o faz? Isso entro já na parte mais crítica. Por um lado, numa lógica muito orientada para o mercado e com uma preocupação social muito reduzida. Uma lógica mais orientada para o mercado, ou seja, a replicação do modelo do ETS setores onde não existia este modelo, desde logo para a questão dos transportes, da energia, do aquecimento. O que nós assistimos nestas propostas de regulação é um alargamento para estes setores e, portanto, uma lógica de mercado claramente onde o que nós precisamos, do meu ponto de vista, para atingir as metas necessárias do ponto de vista da redução de emissões nos transportes. São redes de transportes públicos, são transportes amigos do ambiente, é condições para podermos fazer essa transição e, portanto, não creio que seja através de uma lógica de partilha de emissões ou de fazer leilões de emissões que nós vamos conseguir. Por outro lado, na questão dos edifícios, que é uma questão essencial, nós estamos a discutir uma estratégia fundamental. Aliás, por exemplo, ainda hoje votámos a aplicação, um relatório que avalia o que tem sido a aplicação da Directiva da Eficiência Energética dos Edifícios, e nós continuamos a falar numa lógica que está muito desligada da vida das pessoas e das necessidades.
Doutora Marisa Matias, preciso concluir em 30 segundos, por favor, está bem?
Peço desculpa, não percebi que já tinha falado. Peço desculpa, concluo já, não tinha percebido que estava a falar mais do que os meus colegas. Mas como estava a dizer, portanto, com muito poucas preocupações sociais, nós sabemos que a eficiência energética dos edifícios implica cuidar daquilo que é o consumo energético, implica investimento para que as famílias possam melhorar as suas condições e não é apenas uma lógica como aquela que está a ser tida em consideração, que é uma lógica de mercado de emissões. E, portanto, eu não consigo avançar nas próximas respostas, procurarei detalhar o que estava a dizer, porque senão não fará muito sentido. Muito obrigada.
Obrigado, doutora. Doutor Nuno Melo, pedia-lhe o seu comentário, por favor, a esta questão.
Desculpe, não ouvi?
E tinha dito que lhe pedia que comentasse a pergunta, que respondesse à pergunta que lhe foi colocada nos seus 3 minutos.
Muito obrigado, agora já estou.
Obrigado.
Muito obrigado. Bom, em relação à visão, em relação a este pacote, eu devo dizer que as metas que a União Europeia apresenta são metas muito ambiciosas. De resto, a União Europeia é o bloco de Estados que mais tem comprometido e mais tem tido eficácia, quer nos compromissos, quer nos resultados, no que tem a ver com o aquecimento global e os fenómenos conexos. Uma redução de 55% de emissões até 2030, com comparação com o que acontecia em 1990, é evidentemente muito. É um enorme desafio. E nós estamos a falar de 13 propostas legislativas em áreas tão diversas como, a agricultura, a aviação, a energia, a indústria automóvel, e isto terá necessariamente um impacto nos próprios modelos económicos, à escala global, mas no modelo económico de mercado que a União Europeia perfilha. Eu referiria, por exemplo, e depois mais em detalhe adiante desenvolveria o tema, que também este pacote tem que ser muito aplicado com muita inteligência, porque terá grande impacto do ponto de vista laboral, do ponto de vista social, e de forma dispar na União Europeia, que, embora negocie em bloco, tem em si países com realidades completamente diferentes. Portanto, eu terminaria dizendo que este é um pacote muito, muito ambicioso, mas eu espero que haja a inteligência na sua aplicação dentro do nosso mercado interno, para podermos ser competitivos também no mercado externo. E entre nós, claro.
Muito obrigado pelo seu comentário e pelo cumprimento do tempo. Doutora Sandra Pereira, pedi-lhe então a sua resposta à questão colocada.
Ok, queria só, boa tarde a todos, queria também agradecer o convite e cumprimentar todos os participantes do debate. Pronto, como já foi dito, o pacote do Objetivo 55 visa contribuir a um aumento das metas de redução de gases com efeito de estufa na ordem dos 15%, passar de 40% para 55% até 2030, e para-se assim alcançar uma eventual neutralidade carbónica até 2050 na União Europeia. Enquanto objetivo, é um objetivo coerente, é coerente com os objetivos de manter o aumento da temperatura mundial abaixo dos 2 graus, e de envidar esforços para o limitar a 1,5 graus. Todos compreendemos a pertinência da redução de emissões para a manutenção do equilíbrio entre a natureza e o desenvolvimento societal, da promoção da sustentabilidade e de uma política efetiva do combate às alterações climáticas e às suas consequências. Mas a nós parece-nos é que este pacote aquilo que ele antecipa não permite perspectivar nenhuma mudança na essência da política ambiental da União Europeia, que nos tem motivado críticas. Este pacote mantém a centralidade na competitividade e no aprofundamento do mercado interno, o alargamento do mercado de carbono, a socialização das externalidades negativas, a manutenção dos paradigmas de mobilidade, agrícolas e também comerciais, a privatização da natureza, a liberalização da energia ou a retirada de mecanismos de soberania dos Estados. Dito isto, as nossas expectativas são muito baixas, não é? Tememos até que em Portugal isto tenha como resultados ainda mais degradação do sistema produtivo, o aumento dos preços do produto com a energia à cabeça, a continuação da perda de soberania energética ou do aumento da pressão para a liberalização dos recursos naturais. Não podemos deixar de assinalar que aquilo que aqui é chamado de ambição da União Europeia materializa uma urgência de transformações que não são apenas formais e que visam a afirmação acelerada do capital das grandes empresas europeias em mercados em desenvolvimento, de modo a assegurarem a sua competitividade. Um exemplo também que eu queria trazer para o debate é a questão da mobilidade, não é? Em nenhum destes documentos há a alteração do paradigma da mobilidade como uma forma de combate às alterações climáticas e, portanto, aquilo que nós temos é modos de locomoção rodoviária individuais em vez de transportes públicos e, portanto, é substituir aquilo que são os carros individuais movidos a um combustível fóssil por um carro elétrico. E também qual é que é o preço ambiental disto, desta alteração, se nós não alterarmos, de facto, o paradigma de mobilidade. E, se calhar, agora ficava por aqui.
Muito obrigado pela sua resposta. Eu iria passar à questão 2, e a questão 2 enquadra-se no seguinte. O Fit for 55 exigirá um esforço acrescido das entidades públicas na implementação e compreensão da interação dos diferentes diplomas de si complexos, numa fase em que sabemos que Portugal apresenta algumas fragilidades e falta de recursos técnicos humanos nas instituições nacionais, que tem impactado o progresso da transição energética. Como assegurar que Portugal não se atrasa na corrida à descarbonização e maximiza o potencial dos seus recursos endógenos e conhecimento adquirido como vantagem competitiva do seu passado na área das renováveis? Eu pedi agora à professora Maria Graça Carvalho que fosse a doutora Sandra Pereira, que fosse a primeira a responder à pergunta e depois eu passaria ao doutor Nuno Melo, à doutora Marisa Matias, à professora Graça Carvalho e ao doutor Carlos Zorrinho. Doutora Sandra Pereira, por favor.
Okay, muito obrigada pela pergunta. Eu julgo que as fragilidades nas qualificações técnicas e profissionais em Portugal, que são apontadas por diversas entidades, inclusivamente até por sindicatos, há vários anos, não é? Portanto, a questão não é nova. Tem causas históricas e culturais, estruturais, e que foram potenciadas nos últimos anos pela precarização e desregulamentação do trabalho, pela destruição das respostas públicas na área da formação profissional, pela destruição do sistema produtivo. Eu sei que se for levar a pergunta à letra, posso ter aqui correr o risco de parecer derrotista, mas neste enquadramento e com esta política da União Europeia, a tendência será a de aprofundar a centralização da capacidade produtiva, onde essa capacidade produtiva já esteja instalada e onde já haja esses trabalhadores tecnicamente qualificados e, portanto, isto põe Portugal numa posição muito frágil, não é? Que não partimos todos do mesmo ponto e portanto, nós não estamos a sair agora atrasados, nós já estamos atrasados há muito tempo. Portanto, e entendemos que não tem de ser assim. Era preciso uma política de coesão séria que integrasse a necessária transição energética e que contribuísse para uma ocupação territorial efetiva, conjugando investimentos nas redes de distribuição, com capacidade de produção energética em diversas escalas e utilizando as fontes mais apropriadas para o perfil e o potencial socioeconómico e demográfico de cada região. Sem esta noção da coesão territorial, eu julgo que nós também não podemos falar em transição energética, porque aquilo que nós vamos ter e que estamos a ter é a perda de soberania e degradação e encarecimento dos serviços de forma completamente atabalhoada e sem planeamento estratégico, nem preocupação social e económica. E um processo efetivo e sustentável de transição mobilizaria investimentos para novos modos de produção, entre os quais seria, obviamente, um dos prioritários a qualificação dos trabalhadores, mas também isso não poderia implicar a nossa perda de capacidade energética autóctone, nem os impactos sociais que essa solução traria. Portanto, penso que esta questão é mais do que enfoque na competitividade, o que faz falta é uma política pública de energia que tenha esta visão da coesão territorial integrada. Territorial e social. Obrigada.
Muito obrigado. Dr. Nuno Melo, passo-lhe a palavra a si agora. Não sei se me está a ouvir.
É comigo?
Sim, sim.
Eu estou a ouvi-lo
Realmente
perfeitamente.
o som está muito baixo. Eu pedir que pusessem um som mais alto, senão eu nem consigo ouvir os meus colegas de debate, nem consigo ouvir o moderador quando me dá a palavra. Bom, vamos cá ver. Sobre a questão de como assegurar que Portugal não se atrasa nesta corrida, agora vamos à questão prática do problema, a que também sou muito sensível. Nós temos de ter em conta que a União Europeia não está sequer no grupo dos 3 maiores poluidores do planeta, que são, por proporção, a China a começar, com 27%, enfim, do grau de capacidade poluidora, ou de poluição efetiva, os Estados Unidos com 11% e a Índia com 6,6%. Só depois vem a União Europeia, com 6,4%, e devemos convir que, considerados os países que constituem a União Europeia, então, com níveis muito diferentes. Eu suponho que a Alemanha será o 10º país a nível mundial em termos de poluição que gera. E Portugal está muito lá para trás. Ora, a grande questão está aqui em conseguir aplicar-se este pacote de forma inteligente, não prejudicando os países que têm, para além de mais, diferentes graus de desenvolvimento. Para lhe dar, nós temos que ter uma transição que é decisiva, mas que também tem que ser inteligente. Reparem, por exemplo, o que se passa em Portugal. Portugal tem um dos menores poderes de compra da União Europeia, mas tem neste momento um dos mais altos preços dos combustíveis, um dos mais altos preços da energia, sendo que todos os países se preocupam com a transição energética. Isto é inteligente? Não é. O impacto é equivalente? Obviamente que não é. Pensemos, por exemplo, no que aconteceu há poucas semanas atrás com a refinaria de Matosinhos. A refinaria de Matosinhos encerrou. Durante meses ouvimos o governo dizer que usaria dos mecanismos de transição justa dos fundos de transição justa para requalificar os trabalhadores e reintegrá-los no mercado de trabalho. O que é que aconteceu? A refinaria fechou e os trabalhadores ficaram no desemprego. O que é que significará esta transição, por exemplo, para empresas como a Auto Europa? Nós sabemos que o advento do elétrico e do hidrogênio implicará veículos com muito menos peças. Cerca de 20% das peças de um veículo clássico, por razão de atrito e muitas outras. Ora, a Auto Europa hoje existe por causa desta tipologia de veículos clássicos e à volta da Auto Europa centenas de outras empresas que fabricam componentes da indústria automóvel. A Alemanha, neste momento, especializa os seus trabalhadores para o momento em que serão precisos menos componentes no advento do elétrico, o que significa que empresas como a Auto Europa previsivelmente encerrarão as suas portas. E, portanto, nós temos que perceber que se a negociação é global, o impacto vai ser setorial no que tem a ver com os países, muito diferenciado e mais negativo, desde logo no que tem a ver com o sul da Europa, do que com o centro da Europa, mais produtivo, mais rico, com maior poder de compra e menores custos de produção. E, portanto, terminando, será muito difícil assegurar que Portugal não se atrase comparativamente com os outros países da União Europeia na aplicação deste pacote, muito embora, enfim, as metas sejam óbvias e tenhamos de ser solidários em relação a elas.
Dr. Nuno Melo, muito obrigado. Doutora Marisa Matias, passava-lhe a palavra.
Muito obrigada. Em relação às fragilidades, elas existem, mas têm a ver com políticas de desinvestimento e, portanto, não é uma questão que possa permanecer se houver vontade política, diria eu, investimento para combatê-las. Em relação àquilo que são as condições específicas do nosso país, nós temos condições como poucos do ponto de vista da produção de energia renovável e, aliás, isso já foi demonstrado em tempos. O que nos falta são, do meu ponto de vista, políticas concretas, reais para a transição energética que comecem a ultrapassar limitações, desde logo, como as rendas excessivas de energia que nós continuamos a pagar e que apostem numa descentralização da própria produção energética, mas que esta possa ser ancorada também em redes de distribuição. Um dos problemas maiores que temos é também ao nível das infraestruturas e, desse ponto de vista, creio que há muito caminho a fazer no quadro não apenas do país, mas também da União Europeia e, nomeadamente, no que diz respeito ao armazenamento e distribuição das energias renováveis. Aqui a questão da coesão territorial é absolutamente fundamental, já foi referido pela Sandra e não poderia estar mais de acordo, portanto não vou perder tempo em relação a isso, mas sobretudo creio que precisamos de trabalhar numa política de transição energética que seja consequente com aquilo que são os objetivos implícitos nesta legislação e que, do meu ponto de vista, são insuficientes. Isso passa, obviamente, pela valorização das energias renováveis, por combater a especulação associada ao mercado de emissões de carbono e por permitir que haja condições de produção, distribuição, de armazenamento que neste momento não estão a ser desenvolvidas essas capacidades. Espero que agora tenha cumprido o tempo.
Cumpriu, sim, senhor. Ainda tinha mais 30 segundos se quiser usar. Ok, obrigado. A professora Graça Carvalho, passava-lhe então a palavra.
Muito obrigada. As fragilidades referem-se muito às questões das infraestruturas e aí uma boa aplicação do próximo quadro comunitário de apoio e do plano de recuperação, cumprir os objetivos de ter como principal prioridade a transição verde poderá combatar-se essas fragilidades. O segundo ponto, que penso que seria o ponto principal da pergunta, são as fragilidades referentes ao capital humano, aos técnicos disponíveis nesta área. Ora, Portugal tem um problema desde há anos de falta de especialistas nas duas transições que são grande prioridade na Europa, que é a transição digital e a transição energética. Isso é um assunto que em particular que domino muito bem, tanto nas minhas funções na Ordem dos Engenheiros como no Governo, a necessidade de atrair mais engenheiros, no caso de transições energéticas, engenheiros mecânicos do ramo de energia, engenheiros civis também do ramo de energia, engenheiros do ambiente. Nós temos poucos especialistas nesta área para as tarefas que temos pela frente. E uma das razões em que conseguimos não atrair o número suficiente de alunos para estas áreas, que têm emprego pleno, uma das razões é não conseguimos atrair suficientemente mulheres para esta área. Eu sou professora catedrática exatamente da engenharia mecânica, ramo de energia, portanto, temos geralmente 2, 3 mulheres no técnico para cada 100 alunos e a situação não tem melhorado muito ao longo dos anos, já era assim quando eu era aluna, e portanto há aqui muito a fazer para termos mais técnicos especializados nestas áreas da energia. O mesmo se passa com o digital e, novamente, temos um problema de género também no digital. Nós precisamos, para fazer estas duas transições, precisamos de muito mais especialistas. Precisamos de dar competências básicas à nossa população, tanto no digital como nas áreas de eficiência energética, mas precisamos de muitos engenheiros e de muitos especialistas e também especialistas no digital, porque a transição digital e a transição energética são muito importantes na eficiência energética, nas redes elétricas, precisamos também no digital e aí temos muito a fazer e chamo o apelo aqui às entidades e às universidades e aos institutos politécnicos fazer um grande esforço de atrair mais jovens para estas áreas e requalificar mesmo de outras áreas que facilmente podem ser requalificáveis para estas áreas da energia. Muito obrigada.
Professora, muito obrigado. Dr. Carlos Rinho, antes de lhe passar a palavra, tenho que fazer aqui uma declaração de interesses. A primeira é de que eu fui aluno da professora Maria Graça Carvalho, portanto sou engenheiro mecânico formado na área de energia, e a outra declaração de interesse é que na minha equipa da APREN eu tenho mais mulheres que homens a trabalhar por mérito próprio e não por equilíbrio de género. Feito isso, passava-lhe a palavra só para contestar a questão que lhe foi colocada. Muito obrigado.
Passa a palavra a mim, que
sim,
não sou engenheiro mecânico, mas sou homem.
Mas a gente não vai culpar em nada por causa disso, não se preocupe.
Okay. Muito bem, então de forma breve, nos meus 3 minutos, queria assinalar 3 pontos positivos e um ponto crítico. Primeiro ponto positivo, consenso político, políticas claras. Portugal tem neste domínio políticas claras e um largo consenso político neste caminho da transição verde, da descarbonização. Em segundo ponto positivo, recursos financeiros, quer o Programa de Recuperação e Resiliência, quer o quadro de financiamento plurianual, têm muitos recursos financeiros para podermos fazer esta transição. Por outro lado, somos um país precursor. O ter sido precursor também teve alguns custos, mas o sermos precursores deu-nos muita experiência, deu-nos algumas qualificações, talvez não suficientes em termos de quantidade, e deu-nos também, somos em algumas áreas, são áreas de excelência, que é reconhecida em toda a Europa, em todo o mundo. A área da gestão de redes, por exemplo, e outras áreas, para a energia, Portugal tem, de facto, uma experiência adquirida que o tornou também um país de excelência. E, portanto, são 3 pontos positivos. E há outros pontos mais difíceis, eu salientaria um. Eu acho que é preciso um golpe de asa de governance. Um golpe de asa de governance, porque este processo não se compadece com silos, não se compadece com abordagens verticais, não se compadece com burocracias. É preciso criar uma task force a sério, uma task force para a mudança. A APREN pode ter um papel importante, a sociedade civil tem que ter um papel importante, mas que junto o governo, junto às autarquias, que junto às universidades, as empresas, as comunidades, é preciso uma task force que envolva e que permita este processo de envolvimento, de pertença, de participação nesta transformação. Ela não pode ser, há pouco já o referi e repito, ela não funcionará na Europa nem em Portugal se for uma coisa top-down, imposta apenas pelos projetos de lei ou pelos decretos de lei. Ela tem que envolver as pessoas. E para terminar, quando eu fui relator sombra do meu grupo político na governance da energia, que nós propusemos que os programas nacionais de energia e clima deviam ser elaborados com uma ampla discussão pública. Eu assisti em Portugal a uma interessante discussão pública, mas foi uma interessante discussão pública feita sobretudo entre especialistas. Acho que é preciso que esta discussão vá para além dos especialistas, que chegue às pessoas e que envolva as pessoas nessa discussão. Portanto, o que eu proponho é um golpe de asa de governance e é aquilo que é crítico para termos sucesso. O resto, todos têm dificuldades, mas nós conseguimos ultrapassá-las.
Muito obrigado pela sua resposta e por esse comentário. De facto, é uma dificuldade que nós temos em sede da APREN e do setor, que é tentar simplificar esta linguagem, porque por vezes, quando a simplificamos, perdemos conteúdo e podemos não estar a alcançar a mensagem que pretendemos. Eu iria passar para a última questão que tenho aqui para vos colocar, que é a seguinte. Face à atual crise energética, que pressão este cenário coloca sobre as negociações do Fit for 55 nos próximos meses? Como pensam que deve a Comissão Europeia atuar? Colocar mais celeridade na sua implementação? E como pode o Fit for 55 contribuir para a União Europeia a acelerar a recuperação da sua competitividade económica face ao mercado global, quando integrado com a nova estratégia de industrialização da Europa? Eu iria pedir à professora Graça Carvalho para começar e depois o Dr. Nuno Melo, o Dr. Carlos Rinho, a Dra. Marisa Matias e a Dra. Sandra Pereira. Professora, por favor.
Muito obrigada. O 50 for 55 não está de modo nenhum na origem desta crise atual, crise dos preços da energia. Nesta crise do preço da energia, nós temos, por um lado, problemas com o abastecimento, portanto, uma falta de coordenação entre a procura e o que existe de gás natural e, portanto, o preço do gás subiu e o que se pede à Comissão Europeia e que nós estávamos à espera nessa comunicação que foi publicada há poucos dias e que ficou muito aquém das expectativas, era uma resposta, pelo menos, a esta questão do gás natural, que poderia passar fazer um mapeamento do armazenamento do gás, podia passar por uma compra conjunta de gás natural, portanto, para resolver o problema do abastecimento do gás natural. Por outro lado, os Estados-membros deviam tudo fazer para que neste ponto de partida, quando se está a arrancar para esta transição energética, se partisse de um ponto em que o preço da energia fosse mais barato, porque nós temos uma enorme carga fiscal, temos custos de interesse económico geral muito elevados e claro que esta transição, pelo menos a médio prazo, não quer dizer que depois a longo prazo não se consigam tecnologias mais acessíveis do ponto de vista económico, mas a curto prazo poderão levar ainda a um aumento dos preços e, portanto, nós estamos a partir de um ponto já com grandes dificuldades não só para as pessoas com baixos salários, mas também para a classe média neste momento. E, portanto, deveríamos partir de uma situação em que fosse mais acessível, a energia fosse mais acessível ao conjunto da população. E porque nós precisamos de ganhar as pessoas para esta transição. Não se consegue fazer esta transição contra as pessoas. Vimos o que está a acontecer em vários países, que aconteceu há uns meses atrás em França, e, portanto, a revolta que houve em relação aos preços de energia, e, portanto, só ganhando as pessoas é que conseguiremos levar para a frente um pacote tão complexo e tão abrangente. E, portanto, deveríamos resolver este ponto de partida, tanto a nível europeu como a nível de cada um dos Estados-membros e de Portugal, fazendo um esforço para ter a energia mais acessível, para poder começar então com esta transição imediatamente, mas há soluções que se podem ter desde já.
Muito obrigado pela sua resposta. Doutor Nuno Melo, passava-lhe a palavra.
Muito obrigado. Bom, como é que o Fit for 55 pode contribuir para a União Europeia? Acelerar a recuperação da competitividade. Eu, mais uma vez aqui, tenho que isolar cada país e as suas circunstâncias do cômputo geral da União Europeia. E nisso, dizendo que a União Europeia não pode, insisto, negociar globalmente, mas depois discriminar internamente. E chama a propósito à discussão a questão dos corredores energéticos. Portugal deve ser um dos países que, de forma brilhante, na União Europeia, mais tem contribuído para esta transição no sentido de energias limpas. E a energia que Portugal produz, nomeadamente elétrica, poderia e deveria ser vendida ao resto da Europa. Tal qual, vivendo a União Europeia, principalmente os países de leste, sob grande dependência da Rússia, no que tem a ver com o consumo de gás, corredores energéticos através dos Pirineus, ajudariam a abastecer a União Europeia, esses países do centro, nomeadamente, e estrategicamente até a reduzir esta dependência da União Europeia em relação ao leste europeu, esta União, digamos assim. O que é que nós vemos? Vemos que a União Europeia negocia globalmente, mas países como a França depois impedem a concretização destes corredores energéticos que, no fundo, sem os quais não pode a União Europeia beneficiar daquilo que Portugal produz. E produz muito bem. E, portanto, enfim, eu gostaria e desejaria que, para além das proclamações e das metas, que nos mantêm na linha da frente do esforço, percebêssemos de forma solidária que nós somos uma realidade competitiva dispar, uma realidade competitiva que tem que ser abarcada, digamos, numa lógica equivalente ao chamado princípio da subsidiariedade, não é? E, portanto, tendo em conta os custos de contexto, as nossas circunstâncias, e Portugal é largamente prejudicado. E por isso eu gostava muito que todo o setor da energia, das energias limpas e renováveis em Portugal pudesse vender, pudesse operar, pudesse transportar aquilo que cá é feito para o resto da União Europeia em benefício de todos. E, enfim, suponho que esta será a última pergunta. Queria agradecer muito pelo convite que me fizeram e a oportunidade que me deram de poder estar aqui e tratar destas questões tão determinantes. Muito obrigado.
Nós é que agradecemos, Dr. Nuno Melo, muito obrigado. Dr. Carlos Zorrinho, por favor.
Em primeiro lugar, e aproveitando uma oportunidade para concordar com o Nuno Melo, não acontece muitas vezes.
Não é comum.
É verdade que não é só, está muito eco, não é só Portugal que é altamente prejudicado pela falta das interconexões, como também, ao nível da União Europeia, é muito prejudicada pelo facto de verdadeiramente não ter um mercado único de energia. E por isso temos que lutar contra isso. Quinta-feira vai haver um debate aqui na ITRE, eu próprio vou participar na lista dos projetos de interesse comum. É preciso termos interconexões com os Pirineus, como disse o Nuno, mas é também preciso termos interconexões, por exemplo, com Marrocos, e ter outro tipo de interconexões que permitam articular a União Europeia com os mercados globais. Isso é fundamental e é uma das condições para a União Europeia ser competitiva, é ser independente energeticamente, em primeiro lugar, mas ao mesmo tempo essa independência não significa fechamento, essa independência significa interação. E nós precisamos de colocar os nossos produtos, nós precisamos de colocar os nossos novos produtos industriais, as nossas tecnologias das energias limpas, os produtos da nossa indústria que usamos para descarbonizar na União Europeia e em Portugal, temos também que colocar noutros mercados. Portanto, temos que ter a ambição de chegar aos mercados globais. E essa ambição para chegar aos mercados globais implica que também tenhamos internamente um mercado forte. E por isso a questão das interconexões é muito, muito importante. Por outro lado também, e acho que era importante referir aqui, outra escolha que vamos ter que fazer, e nesta cimeira eu queria deixar estas duas notas. Uma é, nós podemos ter energias limpas com modelos distribuídos, ou podemos ter energias limpas com modelos não distribuídos. Eu julgo que temos tudo a ganhar, do ponto de vista do emprego, do ponto de vista da criação de emprego, do envolvimento das PMEs. Se nós tivermos modelos distribuídos, modelos que combinem vários modelos de negócio, que permitam que as pessoas sejam também, muitas vezes, microprodutores, microgestores, consumidores e, ao mesmo tempo, produtores de energia. E que a energia seja um setor que se desenvolve também numa ligação muito próxima do território. É fundamental e é uma escolha decisiva, e vamos ter que a fazer. Eu estou aqui a tomar partido, claramente, porque também há modelos de energia limpa, e é um tema que certamente vai ser abordado nesta cimeira. Há modelos de energia limpa baseados no nuclear, por exemplo. Eu respeito, é uma opção, ainda por cima a evolução tecnológica tem vindo a reduzir também os riscos associados ao nuclear. Agora, o nuclear, além de não fazer sentido para Portugal, enquanto mercado, digamos assim, é uma opção de gestão centralizada, que não tem multiplicador de envolvimento, que não tem multiplicador de emprego, que não tem multiplicador de desenvolvimento dos territórios. E eu acho que é muito importante que a competitividade se faça dessa maneira, sendo capazes de ser competitivos à escala global, mas também envolvendo as pessoas e envolvendo os territórios.
Muito obrigado pela sua resposta. Só dar-lhe nota que, para além de tudo isso que referiu em relação ao nuclear, o Levelized Cost of Electricity é muito mais alto que o solar e do eólico atualmente, e há estudos que comprovam isso, como a última publicação da Lazard. Doutora Marisa Matias, passava-lhe a palavra. Doutora Marisa Matias, não sei se me consegue ouvir. Temos som?
Muito obrigada. E como acabou de falar em custos...
Por favor.
Conseguem ouvir-me?
Consigo. Eu não sabia se me estava a ouvir a mim.
Estava. Como estava a falar em custos, eu rapidamente queria referir uma questão que penso que não foi referida ainda, porque eu peço desculpa, mas entretanto a ligação caiu, voltei a entrar, e que tem a ver obviamente, com esta pressão que é colocada pelo aumento dos preços da energia, que tem impactos enormes na economia e também tem impactos sociais gigantescos. Nós temos milhões de pessoas, não é milhares, é milhões de pessoas a viver em pobreza energética no contexto da União Europeia, e nós temos que resolver estas questões, estes problemas também para responder aos problemas da pobreza energética. Mas começaram a aumentar os preços da energia e começou logo a haver uma divisão no debate, por exemplo, ao nível do Parlamento Europeu. No debate que nós tivemos, percebeu-se logo um setor do Parlamento Europeu a colocar a ênfase e a pressão nos grandes produtores e multinacionais e na forma como determinam os preços, e um outro setor do Parlamento Europeu já a acusar a transição climática, a transição energética e o combate às alterações climáticas como os responsáveis por tudo isto. Portanto, eu creio que nós temos que acelerar a transição energética. Isso significa deixar de financiar os produtores de combustíveis fósseis, mas sobretudo há uma questão muito concreta que temos em mãos, que é a Directiva dos preços marginais da energia, que tem que ser alterada, e a única coisa que a Comissão Europeia conseguiu fazer e anunciar é que vai fazer um estudo para ver quais são as alterações que devem ser feitas. Nós temos uma diretiva completamente desadequada, que coloca a pressão no aumento dos preços permanentemente. Para dar um exemplo, e termino com esse exemplo, é a mesma coisa que irmos ao supermercado, comprarmos um pão, um queijo e uma garrafa do melhor whisky escocês e chegarmos à caixa registradora e tudo nos ser cobrado ao preço do melhor whisky escocês. É assim que é calculado o preço da energia na União Europeia, e obviamente a revisão do cálculo dos preços é fundamental se quisermos continuar a levar esta discussão seriamente, do meu ponto de vista, e portanto não parar de beneficiar as grandes produtoras seria um bom passo.
Muito obrigado pela sua intervenção e pela metáfora de como é que se calcula o preço no mercado spot. Vou guardar essa e vou utilizar e copiar, e depois vou dizer que tem direitos de autor. Doutora Sandra Pereira.
A atual crise energética é indissociável daquilo que são as opções tomadas pela União Europeia no sentido de liberalização e privatização do setor. Eu estou a ouvir com eco. E da manutenção de mercados oligopolistas, nos quais os preços são cartelizados e onde as metodologias adotadas garantem lucros astronómicos, com enormes diferenciais entre custos na produção e nos mercados, e, mais recentemente, também não se desliga da criação e do funcionamento do mercado de carbono, que tem produtos derivados a serem transacionados em bolsa de forma especulativa. Portanto, eu até, de certa forma, a discussão em torno deste pacote Objetivo 55 até poderá contribuir para expor as fragilidades destas políticas da União Europeia e em como elas são, de facto, nocivas para os consumidores, sejam eles os consumidores privados ou as pequenas e médias empresas. Nós, sem grandes expectativas, iremos contribuir também para introduzir mudanças nos diversos elementos legislativos e que contribuam para diminuir a dependência dos combustíveis fósseis com a promoção de alternativas energéticas do domínio público, para aumentar a eficiência energética dos edifícios ao mesmo tempo que se ataca à pobreza e se enfrentam as lacunas no direito à habitação, para promover o transporte público em detrimento de soluções que apontam para manter o paradigma do transporte individual e não no transporte coletivo, para reduzir emissões através de um normativo específico. Portanto, iremos contribuir nos vários relatórios. Também, por exemplo, para combater a guerra, o militarismo e a indústria do armamento, que são das indústrias mais poluentes e que também quase que nunca se fala disto, mas de facto são das indústrias mais poluentes no nosso mundo. Portanto, nós iremos contribuir para estes relatórios, mas não temos ilusões, não é? Quer dizer, este Objetivo 55 provocará alterações profundas e intensas na política energética dos Estados-membros, que são impostas através de uma via injusta, insustentável e que não é proporcional face à responsabilidade histórica do acumulado de CO2 na atmosfera e não adequada às situações concretas socioeconómicas e energéticas. E também esperamos que esta nova estratégia industrial da União Europeia não seja, uma vez mais, a desindustrialização de alguns Estados-membros, aqueles que, como Portugal, neste momento não estão preparados, para o reforço da industrialização nos Estados-membros que, neste momento, de facto, estão numa posição completamente diferente do nosso e é quem mais tem ganho com a integração europeia. Muito obrigada.
Muito obrigado pela sua resposta. Queria agradecer aos 5 o tempo que nos disponibilizaram hoje. Gostaríamos de contar convosco para a edição do ano que vem. Ficam desde já convidados, porque gostaríamos de ver a evolução entre as vossas opiniões de hoje, o que se fará em termos de espaço europeu e qual será a vossa opinião dentro de um ano, sensivelmente. Muito obrigado uma vez mais. Iremos passar ao próximo painel. Foi um gosto ter-vos aqui connosco. Até breve. Obrigado.
Obrigado. Obrigada.
Obrigada.
Bom, iremos, sem demoras, passar para o nosso segundo painel. Eu preciso perguntar à produção se vão colocar as perguntas na tela ou não.
Boa tarde a todos. Se calhar agora vamos passar então às perguntas do Slido. Deixaram-nos aqui algumas perguntas que nós, infelizmente, nesta altura já não conseguimos perguntar aos nossos debatentes anteriores, por isso, se calhar, passamos para o painel seguinte. Eu creio que a primeira apresentação do painel seguinte era a Paula Pinho, que vem da Comissão Europeia. Não sei se a nossa produção já consegue pôr live a Paula Pinho.
De qualquer das formas, nós depois poderemos enviar essas questões aos oradores e tentar obter uma resposta por mail e partilhar no site da APREN relativamente às primeiras questões. Por favor, Diogo, continua.
Bom, estou só aqui à espera da indicação da Paula Pinho para começar.
Can we start in English now? Because I see that we're all here, almost all. Yeah, we are. Well, good afternoon to you all. Thank you very much for your time and availability to be here with us today. We're going to have a panel to discuss renewables in the new framework are enough to reach the 55% goals. And we will have 3 initial presentations to set the tune. The first one will be from Paula Pinho, Head of Unit, currently Director General of Energy. Paula Pinho will be the one that will start, and then we'll have Alejandro Daney, Deputy Head of Unit for the State Aid of the DG Competition, and we'll finish with Christian Foduk on behalf of the Renewable Hydrogen Coalition. So I will give the floor to Paula to start with her presentation. Paula, please. Thank you very much for being here today, and the floor is yours.
Muito obrigada, APREN, pelo convite. The temptation to speak in my mother tongue is very big, but I will stick to our common language and the language common to this very distinguished panel.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to speak here today. It's really a timely event to take stock of what is being done across Europe as our leaders meet, as you know, in Glasgow for the COP26. As Commissioner Simpson has already highlighted, the EU is at the forefront of the fight against climate change. And with the Fit for 55 package that we presented last July, we are walking the talk and have put the proposals in place to adapt the sectoral legislation to the new ambition of the European Green Deal. And of this package, the Renewable Energy Directive is a key element. The Energy Efficiency Directive is another key element, and several others. But now and here, we're really looking more closely, zooming into the proposal on the Renewable Energy Directive. And before doing so, it's time to also take stock of the progress achieved so far and looking back. And we've just issued the 6th report on the state of the Energy Union. It was published a few days ago on the 26th of October, which confirms the EU's role as a leader in the fight against climate change. The EU has overachieved its target of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 20% below 1990 levels by 2020, with a reduction of 31%. Now, it's true, and we should be very open and transparent about it. It is partially due to the impact of the pandemic on the energy consumption. So this is for the bad reasons, so to say. But it is also due to continued decarbonization trends. And so this does call for optimism at a time when many still express doubts about the targets set by the EU. And when it comes to the share of renewable energy in the EU 27 energy mix, we reached 19.7% in 2019. In other words, very close to the 2020 target of 20%. And our projections for 2020 put the EU at a share of approximately 22%. Now, if we look, and because we are having this conference from within Portugal, for Portugal, our estimations foresee around 30%, 34% actually, which is surely among the top performers. Now, Portugal is blessed with remarkable renewables potential, from hydropower to wind, to solar, to biomass, and even ocean energies. And there are policies being put in place, such as, for instance, the National Hydrogen Strategy, which will help to increase renewables, notably in hard to decarbonize sectors. So obviously, I cannot hide my origins in this case, and I'm very pleased that my home country is leading by example on seizing the potential of renewable energy. Now, to complete the work, the transposition of the current Renewables Directive needs to be ensured. And as you may know, by mid-2021, A few months ago, member states were due to transpose the 2018 recast Renewables Directive into national law. Portugal has not done this fully yet. We are very confident that this will soon be the case. And of course, it is true that the directive is being reopened again in order to deliver on the increased climate target ambition. That does not mean that the current directive does not need to be transposed. It does need to be transposed because it really delivers on what is necessary as steps towards an increased ambition. And it includes many rules, notably to further push the deployment of renewables in a cost-effective manner and to the benefit of citizens. For instance, with its new framework for empowering consumers and for speeding up permitting procedures, which are essential steps if we are really to seize the potential of renewables. Now, with the new proposal that we put on the table last July, and now we look towards the next steps, a new target of 40% of renewable in the energy mix is put forward in terms of EU's final consumption by 2030. So we are aiming at almost doubling the current share of renewables in the EU's energy mix. And we are taking into consideration the different level of maturity of renewable technologies, and therefore putting forward in the proposal not only a general target, but also a revised set of measures, sectoral targets, sub-targets, and benchmarks. And the idea is really to have a combination of tools that can strike the balance between ensuring flexibility for the member states, ensuring that the national specificities can be taken into consideration, and at the same time promoting technologies while speeding up the progress on the decarbonization of the whole energy system. So in the proposed legislation of renewables, we are putting forward a balanced deployment of renewables across all sectors, in the power sector, in industry, on buildings, and on transport, because only so really will we be able to deliver on this increased target of 55% reduction of emissions. Now, to do so, electrification is very often the best and the cheapest route towards decarbonization. And we are also proposing further measures to making it easy for consumers to charge, for instance, their electric vehicle when they will have one, of course, and there's still a long way to go there. But to put in place the conditions which will allow for such electrification, to feed electricity back to the grid also, for instance. Now, there are sectors where we do know that electrification will be more difficult. Take aviation, take heavy-duty transport, or high-heat industrial applications. And there we are looking at the rollout of renewable hydrogen. And very specifically, in order to facilitate the deployment of renewable fuels of what we call in the EU jargon, renewable fuels of non-biological origin, and thinking particularly of green hydrogen, the Commission's proposal contains specific sub-targets for their consumption and a certification system and a database for renewable fuels, which should be extended to all users so that all fuels can be tracked. A word also on bioenergy, which is, of course, always one which caters for a lot of discussion and, if I may, also for some controversy. We are well aware of the importance of producing biomass in a sustainable way. And so we are building on what had already been put forward in the 2018 Renewables Directive. And in the July proposal, the idea is to go further and to make the sustainability criteria for woody biomass stricter, and introducing also no-go areas from which harvested wood for energy would not be considered for the renewables target and would not be eligible for subsidies. Lastly, the proposal put forward in July contains a number of flanking measures in order to promote the deployment of renewables and their integration into the energy system. And the most prominent examples of this type of measures are, for instance, the obligation to have a cross-border pilot project, so really seizing the potential across the borders within the EU, a new common EU methodology for claiming the label of renewable energy used to produce industrial products, or, for instance, additional elements for the use of power purchase agreement. So the idea is really to putting into place upgraded targets and regulatory instruments to ensure the fast development of renewable energy in the EU, bringing in new technologies to the market, and ultimately driving down the costs. Now, we do know that this will not come for free. It means billions of euro in investments that will be needed for the industry, for electrolyzers and grid expansions, together with reskilling and massive innovation. Here again, there is, and the Commissioner mentioned it, money available at EU level to help the energy transition. The EU's recovery instrument, the Next Generation EU, alongside the multi-annual financial framework, provides an unprecedented volume of resources, which are meant to be going directly into climate and energy investments, including on renewable energy and hydrogen projects. This, of course, sends a very strong signal to the market and to investors, since, and that, let us be very, very clear about this, public financing alone will not get us there. So we do need to also lever private investment. And finally, renewables are also a source of economic growth and jobs for the Europeans, in particular local jobs, with more than 1.5 million people currently working in the sector in the EU and generating an estimated annual turnover of 158 billion euro. In this sense, and when faced with the ongoing high energy prices, and this, I know this question has also been put to the panel previously, the best midterm response to the ongoing high energy prices is to advance faster and with greater resolution with the implementation of the renewables policy, precisely as a means, notably to reduce the dependence on fossil fuels and eventually to also reduce the costs of energy. So on the question of this panel, will it be enough to meet the targets, and the distinguished panel will answer that. From our side, from my side, the answer is no. Targets are only one piece in the puzzle. Other regulatory and enabling measures are part of the solution, and it is really all of these elements together that will allow for a massive overhaul of our energy system and the modernization effort of our economy, from which Europe will reap the benefits, both in terms of prosperity and jobs, European technological leadership, as well as eventually cleaner and cheaper energy. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigado à Paula Pinho pelos contributos trazidos sobre a Diretiva RED 3. We now have the opportunity to get to know, also in due detail, what the European Commission has established in terms of support to Member States. So I give the floor to Alejandro Donay.
So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this conference. Let me upload or share the slides that I hope you can see at this moment. Can you confirm that you see them?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Thanks a lot. Then, as Paula has said, the whole framework is not enough. There are many things needed, not only huge investments that should come from the private, but also from the public sector. And in that context, the guidelines, the stated guidelines for environmental protection and energy are a key element of this whole framework. Not the main one, because I think regulation and directives are the main instrument, but obviously the possibilities for public support are essential for the different member states to be able to reach the targets in renewables. So today I wanted to present to you a little bit this framework from the competition point of view. As you probably know, the current guidelines are the state aid guidelines for environmental protection and energy that have been in place since 2014. And they already provide a very stable and nice framework to allow member states to support the different areas of the Green Deal, not only renewables, but also other areas. And they have helped in the last few years to design public support programs to achieve the climate targets. In 2019, we carried out a fitness check, which is an evaluation of the guidelines, and they show that the guidelines and the corresponding general block exemption regulation rules have worked well, and they have generally delivered on supported climate targets. Since 2014 until 2020, I think we have approved more than 200 billion of aid supporting the energy sector. A big part of that, obviously, in renewables schemes. But obviously now we are facing a huge challenge, which is the Green Deal, the green transformation, and also the recovery after the COVID crisis. And then the guidelines need to be ready for that. So we are currently reviewing them with the objective of adopting the revised guidelines by the end of this year, so that they can enter into force at the beginning of next year. There was a public consultation of the draft text in June, July. Many of you, I mean, all of you had the opportunity to see that proposed guidelines. And now we are finalizing, after analyzing all the contributions and comments from stakeholders, we are finalizing the text so that we can adopt them, the Commission can adopt them before the end of the year. So I want to give you a very brief view or snapshot of these guidelines. First, the rationale of this revision. On one hand, we wanted to enlarge the scope of the support because, as I said, the Green Deal represents a huge challenge for the European Union, and we wanted the guidelines to cover new areas, new technologies, focus on all the areas of the Green Deal, but also to have a flexibilization of the compatibility rules. But obviously, if we give wider flexibility and larger scope for support, there have to be some safeguards because these are competition rules, and we have to make sure that the aid goes to where it's really needed to improve the environmental protection, and also that is limited for that. No, we have to avoid greenwashing, and we have to avoid that the aid unduly distorts the competition or the integrity of the internal market. Because we have to make sure that this green transition is at the same time also cost efficient and contributes to the integrity of the single market. Obviously, our revision also is aiming at align the rules and make them coherent with all the relevant new legislation. And obviously that includes the proposals from the Commission in the Fit for 55 package that was adopted in July and that has been discussed in the previous panel, and also with all the policies in the environmental and energy fields. These new guidelines, as you have seen, we have changed the name. We have included one letter, the C, that stands for climate, because we want to reflect the importance of this Green Deal, no, of this green transition. And these guidelines, we have tried to really favor this green transition by looking at the different type of measures, as you can see in the second half of the slide. Or dividing them in green, gray, and brown. So when we are looking at really green measures, those that contribute to decarbonization and to the green transition, the new guidelines will try to facilitate as much as possible the measures and broaden the scope. When we are talking about green measures, I could say that's mainly gas. When we are talking about gas, we understand the importance of gas as a transition energy up to 2050, but we will look very closely at those measures to make sure that they are fully proof and compliant with the 2030 and 2050 targets, and in particular that they do not generate lock-in effects or stranded assets, and that they do not displace other cleaner technologies. And finally, there is a clear commitment that was already mentioned and clearly spelled out in the Green Deal communication, which is to phase out support measures to the most polluting fossil fuels, what we call the brown measures. And on those, the new guidelines will consider very unlikely that aid can be authorized for those type of measures. So to focus on the green ones, how we want to further facilitate them, as I said, we are enlarging the scope of the guidelines, and there we are going also into new areas, further into industry decarbonization, but also into clean mobility infrastructure, resource efficiency, biodiversity. Obviously, renewables is still there. It was already a key element of the previous guidelines, and it will remain a key element of these guidelines. So we want to open the scope to those technologies that can deliver the Green Deal. Second, we are aiming to make the rules easier and more flexible. We are allowing higher amounts of aid under these new guidelines, 100% of funding gap, and also new aid instruments like carbon contract for differences. So we are open to member states to present to us the different aid instruments, and we will analyze them. And also, we will not be asking for individual notifications for large green projects that are already within approved schemes. On security of supply, very specific chapter, but also here we wanted to give a green touch to it. So you know the electricity regulation has some emissions limits into the generation capacity that can participate in security of supply measures, but we will allow member states to impose, if they want, stricter emission limits, and also to give more generous contracts or longer term contracts for green technologies. And finally, and I will explain this in more detail in the next slide, we are trying to make some measures or more measures to fall under the GBER. The GBER, if you know, is the General Block Exemption Regulation, which means that those measures that are covered by the GBER do not need to be notified to the Commission for prior approval. So member states can directly implement them in compliance with the provisions of the GBER. Finally, as I said, all this further facilitation has to come with some safeguards to preserve the integrity of the internal market. And we are proposing in the new guidelines that member states do public consultation of the schemes they want to put in place. So they involve stakeholders in the design of those schemes. And second, we are also asking that member states calculate the CO2 abatement cost. No, we want to know and member states to show, to be transparent on how much cost to reduce CO2 with the different technologies. As I mentioned, the GBER has to be seen in combination with the guidelines. We have the guidelines and the GBER, and here we're going first for an horizontal enlargement. So there are new articles covering additional possibilities of support to renewables, other decarbonization measures, and also a vertical enlargement, which means that the notification thresholds for measures to fall under the GBER, we are increasing them. And also we are allowing up to 100% aid intensity, so higher amount of aids when aid is granted via competitive bidding. Also in some areas, we are providing a green bonus, which is an additional top up in the maximum 8 intensities. Here, just to flag that the revision of the GBER, which is also going on, the public consultation of the text is open now. I think it's until the end of November or mid-December. And the revision of the GBER will be adopted a little bit later, will be by mid next year. So to summarize and focusing a bit more on renewables, in the new guidelines and the GBER, they fall under the chapter of reduction and removal of greenhouse gas emissions. As you can see in the guidelines, there is not a specific chapter anymore for renewables. That does not mean that renewables cannot be supported, and that does not mean that renewables cannot be supported on their own and that there is no need to put them in competition with other technologies. We have restricted the guidelines to focus on objectives instead of individual technologies in order to broaden the scope to all the measures and technologies that can contribute to decarbonization, but still, as it's said in the slide, member states have the possibility to do renewables only schemes with any other further justification, and also with some justifications they can do tech specific schemes. As you can see also in the last column, we have taken all the possibilities for tech specific schemes from the Renewable Directive, and they are included as they were already in the guidelines. In addition, as I said, we are departing from the previous, at least in the guidelines, from the previous method of maximum 8 intensities, now looking at potential aid amounts up to 100% of the funding gap. And as I mentioned, we have included these safeguards. In the GBER, we have increased the notification thresholds and aid intensities. In particular, there are higher aid possibilities for installations that only use renewables, and we have also simplified the methodology for aid calculation. And we are including a new aspect for renewable energy communities with further facilities for them and the possibility to be exempted from competitive bidding when getting aid. And finally, in this slide, you just can see the articles that we are proposing in the revised GBER. I mentioned Article 39, which is energy efficiency in buildings, because this revised one also includes the possibilities to get support for the installation of renewables in buildings in an easier manner. Then we have put together the investment aid for renewable sources, renewable hydrogen, mentioned it specifically, and high efficient cogeneration. And then obviously we keep the 2 articles on operating aid for electricity from renewable sources and from small scale installations, where we have also explicitly added the promotion of renewable energy communities. And on the last column, you can see the proposed thresholds under the new GBER. So that's all I wanted to present to you today. As I said, the current EAG already supported and in particular the competitive tendering requirement helped to drive costs down. It almost half the cost of support for some technologies like onshore wind or PV in the last few years, and we will continue the same line in the current in the proposed guidelines that should enter in force from the beginning of next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alejandro. Before we start the debate, Christian Fodak from the Renewable Hydrogen Coalition would also like to share his point of view. Let's check his presentation. Thank you.
Não temos som.
Bom, obviamente estamos com um pequeno problema de áudio, portanto, se calhar vamos passar aqui o Christian um bocadinho para mais tarde e se calhar eu ia pedir ao Pedro para prosseguir com o debate com os presidentes das associações europeias que estão à partida já todos ligados aqui no nosso ecrã. Pedro, força.
Obrigado, Diogo. We're on. Good afternoon, everyone, once again. Thank you very much for attending and for the availability of your time. I know it is precious given the current state of the situation we are in. We have among us Giles Dixon, Jorgo Chazimarkis, Valburga Vesmerber, Patrick Clarence, Dirk Hendricks, Remit Grouet, Anjamar Rossach. I have a couple of questions that I would like to address to you, given you represent the European associations of all the technologies which are absolutely relevant to the energy transition and to the Fit for 55 package. And so I have a couple of questions that I would like to address you. I'm going to share with you the order so we can have 5 people remotely, which is not easy, but I will try to do my best to make sure that we can hear all your comments. So for the first question, I will ask Giles first, Jorgo in second, Valburga in third, Patrick in fourth, Dirk in fifth, Remy in sixth, and Jean-Marc in seventh. And the first question is, given the currency of achieving the Fit for 55%, do you think the level of ambition proposed in the RED II revision is it sufficient, or should the European Commission go further on the 2030 targets? And why do you think that? Should the emissions reductions of 55 and the national energy and climate plans for 2030 targets be binding per member state and not only as the group of the Europe at 27? So, Giles, I will start with you. We have no sound.
Thank you very much indeed, Pedro. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The level of ambition is enough. It is a very high level of ambition indeed, a 40% renewable energy target. For wind energy, it means that we expand the volume of wind energy capacity in the EU from 180 gigawatts today to 452 gigawatts by 2030. That is a huge increase, and it requires us to build 30 gigawatts of new wind farms, onshore and offshore combined, in the EU every year between now and 2030. 30 gigawatts a year. We are currently building 15 gigawatts a year. So to deliver this level of ambition requires a huge effort. Above all, it requires major progress on the acceleration and the simplification of the permitting of new renewables investments. And it's very good that Paula mentioned the importance of tackling these bottlenecks on permitting when she spoke earlier. Do these targets need to be binding at national level? We do not think so. They used to be binding at national level, of course, when we had the old 2020 package, but the world was very different then. First, renewables were much more expensive. Back in 2008, 2009, when the 2020 package was agreed, you needed to oblige national governments to invest in renewables because the economic case was much less obvious than it is today. Today, the economic case is glaringly obvious. Renewables are the cheapest form of new energy production. It makes economic sense to invest in them. And of course, again, as Paula was saying, people have seen the huge socioeconomic benefits that come from the expansion of renewables with all the jobs and investments that they bring. There are perhaps just 6 out of 27 member states that need a bit of a kick on ambition. That's Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Czechia, Slovakia, and Slovenia. The 2023 NECP review will be a very good moment for the Commission to administer that necessary kick on those 6 member states to increase their level of ambition. And perhaps some other member states may need a bit of a kick as well around the same time. And of course, we have the new cross-border renewables financing mechanism that Paula mentioned earlier, which can be used to present the case, to strengthen the case for the 6 governments and others to increase their investments in renewables. Thank you.
Giles, thank you very much. Jorgo, the word to you, please. The floor is yours.
Muito obrigado. Many thanks for this invitation. Indeed, we are, as hydrogen, very much linked to the renewable world. So whatever has been said by Giles is absolutely supported also by us. We do not want to change these targets. We think the targets are good to go, we have one request: to not water them down. That's rather our issue here, because we see that there have been already some member states, and Giles mentioned a number of them, that have concerns that these targets cannot be achieved. So I would answer your second question right away and say, why don't we then try to achieve the targets on a European level and give these member states who have difficulties an opportunity to team up with others. However, the high targets are so important in order to bring the costs down. That is the important message also to investors. If the targets are high, then we will have the chance to bring down CapEx costs, especially for the technology that is very close to our heart. That's the electrolyzers, very, very fast and faster than, and Giles said this, than the energy costs in other sectors. The targets in our sector are good and achievable. 50% of current hydrogen used in industry, mainly fertilizer industry, petrochemical industry, needs to be replaced by green hydrogen, by renewably produced hydrogen. And overall, the fuels target, Paula mentioned it, the Refunovio, renewable fuel of non-biological origin, will have a target of 2.6%. That's very, very good. And please let them where they are. We support the Fit for 55 package, as it's good also for hydrogen, for renewably produced hydrogen. Muito obrigado.
Thank you, Jürgen. And thank you for your Portuguese also. It's excellent. Walburga, the floor is yours.
Hello and greetings from Glasgow. Thanks very much for having me here today. I am very happy to be joining your conference in a country which will be a gigawatt solar country anytime soon, hopefully. So we're watching very closely the very nice developments we see on the solar market, and in a couple of months you will be among the gigawatt markets in Europe. I am very often agreeing with Giles and with Jorgo on the level of ambition. We have a slightly different view, because we do think it's a good start for sure. You know, going from 32 to 40% is a leap forward. But if you ask me if it's ambitious enough, it is a clear no from my side. And I would like to give you 3 reasons why we don't think it's ambitious enough. It's ambitious, but it's not ambitious enough. It's not ambitious enough for the climate. It's not ambitious enough for businesses in Europe. And it's not ambitious enough in order to provide for a just transition. And let me detail this a little. It's not ambitious enough for the climate because we need to achieve 1.5 degrees Celsius. And 40% are not propelling us on the right pathway to 1.5%. It's not enough for businesses, and Paula mentioned the high energy prices, electricity prices we see in many countries today. We need the cheapest electricity possible for European businesses in order to make them competitive on a global scale. Just recently, a major business association sent a letter to member states asking them to be more ambitious. The chemical sector, the paper industry, the aluminium sector, they want to go faster with renewables because they see a clear competitive advantage. And by the way, we've done a study together with LUT University where we looked into a possibility, what 100% renewables would mean for Europe in terms of costs. And it showed very clearly that if we would go down the road of more renewables, 100% renewables in our study, it would cost 6% less than business as usual. And just transition, the third reason why we do think that it's not ambitious enough is households can save, and if I'll give you an average of 4 countries, Germany, Belgium, Poland, and Spain, on average, households are saving 60% on their electricity bills if they would be prosumers, have their own production of electricity. And by the way, higher ambitions can also create more green jobs. We just recently issued a study on jobs where we showed that from the more than 300,000 jobs we're providing today already, if we would go for 40% renewables, it would still, it will be a major amount we will have on additional jobs. It's 740,000. But if we would aim for a higher target, and I'm coming to the target in a second, which we are aiming for, it would be more than 1.1 million green jobs in our sector alone, which we would be creating. So 300,000 more jobs. So what are we aiming for? Not 40%, but 45%. And for those who tell me it's not possible, I would like to share with you the growth that solar is already having today. So we're growing much faster than any of the forecasts. Even if we just continue with the business as usual, we would be at 580 gigawatt solar by 2030, 580 gigawatt with business as usual. So let's try to tap into the huge potential we see on European roofs and on commercial and industrial sector in order to get to more renewables. Anyway, we will be installing, 30, 35 gigawatt per year in the next couple of years, even higher going forward. So let's tap into the sources we have, let's tap into these potentials, and let's get us to the ambitions we need.
Patrick, the floor is yours. Your comments, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I hope you hear me well.
We can hear you.
Thanks for the invitation. I found it very interesting to see that on one side you hear some speakers saying that it's enough, ambitious enough, we need not to implement it. Others say, as we hear, that it's not enough. One thing is sure, and all of them showed it, that if we don't integrate these huge amounts of renewables which will come, it will never be enough because we will curtail too much. And I'll give you just one example. The UK recently calculated. They had 3.6 terawatt hours of wind curtailed annually last year. And if you would put 20 gigawatt hours of storage in the system, you could reduce these losses by 50%. So it's good to add renewables, and it's needed to generate this energy in a CO2-free manner, but it's not enough if it's not integrated. So the increase in renewables must go paired together with the increase of energy storage. We need to have hybrid projects where both are in, and we need to have the targets for energy storage also recognized. We have started, and it's a very good start, by identifying green hydrogen targets, the decarbonization of hydrogen via electrolyzers via longer term. We see that we have a lot of lithium-ion batteries going into the cars and price decrease enormously. But between the hydrogen and the lithium-ion battery, there's a lot of time we need to cover. And we need, therefore, to have longer duration storage, obviously, but also not only the flexibility services for storage need to be tackled, but we need to look at is also that we need to shift energy, as I just said, for the renewable energy, which is otherwise curtailed. So energy storage will be needed for a system with high penetration of renewables, on one side to provide flexibility in the sub-second, but also to shift big amounts of energy from today to tomorrow, to next week, or to the next season. That's why we need to include both. If you look at what we project as ease, we're in the midst of defining these targets. But the first indication tells us that we need to have up to 200 gigawatt installed capacity of energy storage in Europe if we want to achieve the 2030 targets. 200 gigawatt, that's enormous. We're nowhere near to these targets. And in 2050, we would probably need more than 500 gigawatt. Again, we're refining this and we'll publish in some months a document on this, or weeks. If we don't cover both, we will fail to achieve the decarbonization target because we will have always gas as the backup source, fossil gas probably, and we will therefore always curtail, use gas as backup, and have high electricity prices, which would be otherwise prevented. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick, for that insightful opinion. Dirk, I will pass the word to you. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Well, with regard to the question if the current renewable energy target for 2030 is enough, we are certainly disagreeing to this. We were always of the opinion that it should be at least 45% or even higher. The reasons for these are very simple. First of all, you are all aware about the report that had been published here by the IPCC in August. That came to the conclusion that we indeed need to act even faster, that we need to decarbonize even faster if we still want to have a chance to reach the Paris goal of at least 1.5 degree. The second thing is, I guess, the last years have also shown that the impact of climate change with all the natural disasters that are coming is much more costly than anything else. So this is another reason why it is absolutely important to act now. And I mean, renewables together with energy efficiency are the only way forward to do. What we experience at the moment is then, in addition to that, that the dependency on fossil fuel imports, here also specifically the high prices for fossil fuels, especially gas. And I mean, here also renewables are clearly the answer. They are much more cheaper. They are already available. And also, as Bogi has pointed out, is that they also produce local jobs here, and we are not spending our money abroad. So, I mean, again, this is another reason and also shows the necessity to be much more ambitious than we are currently. Most importantly, is of course that renewable energy is here the future. It has been clearly mentioned here and politically articulated here in the past that we would go into this area. And I mean, also leading in the renewable energy field. And I guess this is what is really and clearly the chance here for the European Union to become and maintain here the position as world leader. Means also that this is a classical industry policy. So we have the job, Bogi pointed it out already, that we can produce quite a lot of local jobs here. But this is also what we are able to export. We are able to export our know-how, our technology, and a successful renewable energy policy in the European Union is the basis for a successful industry policy, both domestically and abroad. Another reason is just simply why to have a higher renewable energy target? Because simply we can. We have the technologies there, the feasibility studies are there, capacity. Patrick pointed out that if you're going to think a little bit into system integration, it can be even easier achieved like this. And so we have everything available. It just needs to be rolled out without any kind of regret option. Specifically, what also needs to be taken into account, it should not be forgotten that there is only wind and solar in the system. We have a lot of other renewable energy sources available, be it small hydropower, be it bioenergy, geothermal, etc., that are very often, unfortunately, overlooked. So if we're going to look into these kind of sources again, it would be even easier to reach the higher target, and also in a kind of like much cheaper manner. A last word on binding national targets. Well, you certainly know our position that we as RF are always advocating for binding national targets. It's very simple. We see that, for example, right now under the current governance regulation, we see already now in discrepancies between the NECPs of governments and the reality on the ground. However, this goes very often without competencies. There is no leverage specifically from the European Commission to do something against these governments. The previous speakers have mentioned here exactly that there are governments who are in a very high danger that they lag behind. So there is very little that we can do from a European level to change this. And I mean, if we're going to stay in this kind of possibility, or if we're going to stay like this with no binding national targets, we run a high risk, first of all, not only of a two-track Europe. So we have the front runners in renewable energies, but also the laggards who are willingly lag behind. And then the second thing is that even then the overall goal in renewable energy cannot be even reached, and that we then need to intervene probably 1 or 2 years before by additional measures, because we cannot reach the aim. So this is why we are strongly favoring binding national targets. We guess that it's a really very good instrument to do so. And yeah, we hope that there will be indeed a higher renewable energy target for 2030 after the final negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dirk. Remy, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you very much to APREN and everybody. Very happy to be here. Well, the good thing about coming last, I can agree with everybody. So I agree with Giles that we need more streamlined permitting procedures, but also agree with Valborgia that 40% is not enough, so I'll focus on that first. From our perspective, bigger is better, higher is better when we're talking about targets. If we are to reach 2 degrees or to avoid reaching 2 degrees, or let alone 1.5, we need to think big. We've heard Giles say that renewables, wind and solar specifically, are cheapest now, and they will be the basis of our system in the future. We have the means to do it. But if you looked at the IEA World Energy Outlook, it showed us very clearly that the investments that we need to get there must be tripled in renewables. So there is a path ahead, and while the cheap costs of commercial renewables, wind and solar, is going to help, and it's going to mean that we're doing investments. We're not having costs on the burden as a burden on the balance sheets of national states. We still need investors to have visibility, and targets give visibility to investors that investing today in 2021 in a gas plant will let them with a stranded asset 5 or 10 years down the line. It gives visibility to the banks that this is where they should put their money. And they are eager to do that. But the visibility of legislation is paramount to help the private sector invest in the right direction. Kadri Simpson said 40% by 2030 is ambitious, but feasible. We think 45 is also feasible. Feasible because we reached 20% with technologies that were not commercial. And today we have technologies that are commercial. And we have also emerging technologies. And we represent with Untitled mostly technologies who are not commercial technologies. They still need to be supported, but the rest can be done with the commercial ones. So binding, non-binding, at the moment we have a framework. I prefer binding. Non-binding targets typically don't give a very strong signal to investors. Now, binding at EU level is already a better stage. As long as you don't weaken the governance, it should be enough. But a higher target gives a strong political signal. And I want to finish with maybe a word on tomorrow's electricity grid, and to agree then again now with Patrick. We will have a base load. Tomorrow's base load will be variable. We will have an electricity system based on wind and solar in most countries around the world. So we will have most of our electricity coming from 2 variable sources. So you will need not only storage, sorry, Patrick, but also demand response very clearly. Anything we can do on that side, very important. We will need energy efficiency. We will need a bunch of other renewables like geothermal, who's not here today, and naturally tidal and wave, who are technologies that can produce at different times from wind and solar, so that you lower your peaks of production and you are better able to have dispatchable technologies to adapt demand to the production. So this is really what we need in the future. And the Renewable Energy Directive, beyond having just a target for renewable at 45%, should consider a target for innovation. And I was very happy to hear Paula Pino talk about a multitude of sub-targets, and I hope we can get back to that in the next part of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Remy. Jean-Marc, the floor is yours, please.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. For the bioenergy sector, indeed, we find the renewable targets reasonably ambitious. We cannot be over-ambitious. It has to be achievable for the member state, I think. But the sub-target for renewable heat, we haven't discussed the renewable heat so far, is still important and definitely achievable, because in fact, with this 1.1 percentage point increase, it's just like business as usual, honestly. And bioenergy, biomass for heat, is representing the lion's share of the renewable heat, and is really in a favorable position for the moment. We have abandoned biomass, so the prices are stable, unlike the price for gas and electricity for the moment, which are skyrocketing and concerning for people and energy poverty. So, in fact, with or without the directive, biomass will reasonably grow. And it was said before by the Commission that this creates a polemic, but you have to know that this polemic really is staying at the European level. But as soon as you go down to the local level in the rural areas, there you don't have this polemic. They see really the advantages of bioenergy for the rural communities to use a local fuel that is creating jobs at the local level. Bioenergy will grow, in fact, at a reasonable pace. According to the models of the Commission, we will increase by a few dozens of percentage, so in 10 years, which is really the pace that we had in the last 20 years or so. And in fact, we are the only renewables with sustainability criteria by law for the moment. So this guarantee the optimized impact on environment. About the binding impact, we fully support this for renewable heat, which is the proposal for the moment, because still it triggers the development of renewables in the countries that are lagging behind. What we mentioned before for wind, so the same is valid for bioenergy. Thank you. I will stop there. Thank you.
Jean-Marc, thank you very much for your answer. Before I move to the second question, and without being presumptuous, we are really proud of this first question because we are all renewables and we don't think alike, which is good because discussion usually takes us further than full alignment. For the second question, I'm going to revert the order of answering. I will start with Jean-Marc, go to Patrick, go to Dirk, then Jorgo, Remy, Valburga, and Giles. And this should be pretty straightforward. And the question is, which are the main topics of the revised directive of renewables that you consider critical to be improved, and should it be included to be tackling during the trilogue negotiation process? So what is your opinion on this, and what are your three main topics that you would like to be discussed in the trilogue? Jean-Marc, you start now. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I will be short again. There are many articles related to bioenergy in this, in the RED 2 and also in the coming RED 3. So I will focus on this with three comments. The EU institutions should pay attention not to regulate the whole forest sustainability with the energy legislation. This is really creating problems and tensions for the moment. For the whole woodworking industry is somehow worried about the consequence of the proposals on the table. And these proposals and even RED II implementation is not, for the moment, really not fully supported by the member states. And the guidance document for the RED II implementation has been rejected several times by the member states. So this is really a critical issue. So again, first point, don't try to regulate all forest sustainability with energy legislation, knowing that there are many other legislation to do so. Second, for the criteria that are proposed for the sustainability, which are welcomed by Energy Europe, but they need to be better assessed. We are still missing, and it's a pity, a proper impact assessment for this in terms of impact on jobs, impact on price for biomass, impact on the security of supply, and so on. And for the whole, it's not a question for bioenergy. It's really a question for the whole supply chains of wood, knowing that there are legislation to support and promote the bioeconomy, the wood use in buildings, but all these industries, they need this proper supply of wood, and the forest sector is very worried about the criteria that are on the table. And the third point is still in the same line. For biomass, as I mentioned before, the closer you are to the rural areas, the more support you have for bioenergy. It means that we need to leave more subsidiarity to the member states to develop bioenergy. You cannot regulate everything at the European level, knowing that bioenergy can vary a lot from the north of Europe to the south, east, and west. You have different types of biomass, different market conditions. So keep subsidiarity to the member states if we want to have the member states really fully supporting RED III. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Marc. Patrick, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much. First, I would like to start to clarify, obviously, the energy system needs flexibility, and interconnection is one way of flexibility. Obviously, demand-side management is a way of flexibility, so we will need all of those. But energy storage is the only technology which can take big amounts of renewable energy or energy in general and make it available the next day or the next season. So this is therefore a really an important part, but only a part of it. I do agree to this, just to clarify. Regarding the revision of the RED II, and I will limit myself to the 3 points we were asked. First of all, I find it good that already for the moment energy storage has been taken up. There is a real requirement of transparency between system operators and energy storage operators. So it's information flow. That's very important to have this project being more efficient. We see that there are provision of renewable use in buildings and in transport, where energy storage is the link or the most important link. And so we're moving in the right direction. Regarding the 3 points, I think it's important that we focus more on hybrid project of renewables and storage, so that we allow support schemes also to take into consideration that renewable energy stays renewable energy when it is stored. And this brings me actually to the second point, which is the guarantees of origin. This is the tool which is discussed, and we need to give the same guarantees of origin and the same renewable energy certification, depending on how it will be done, independently if this renewable energy was stored or not. Because if it's stored, it's even getting more flexible, but the basic added value to the system stays the same. And finally, the last point, I touched upon it a bit earlier. We see that batteries are pushed a lot, and it should go on because they're driving storage deployment. They are making a lot of system services very cheap and very fast. So we need to continue with this. But on the other side, it is not only enough to talk about batteries. We have larger scale storage. We heard the hydrogen community before. We have pumped hydro storage. We have heat storage, which is, I believe, the cheapest way of storing energy is actually a heat storage. And if you want to have the buildings and more renewables taken up in buildings, obviously to store it as heat and use it as heat later on, then you get a more efficient use of the stored energy. And it is therefore not only looking at the short-term storage, but the seasonal storage, meaning heat in the summer stored in order to be used in the winter. So be technologically neutral when you talk about support for storage, when you mention storage, and when you link storage to the balancing of the system and to the integration of renewables. These are the 3 points. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Dirk, your turn now.
Okay, with regard to the main topics for a revised Renewable Energy Directive, I mean, of course, I repeat that here for the negotiations, certainly the height of the renewable energy target. We hope that in particular national governments sort of like become consciously that they, as main responsible actors for implementing the directive, need to step up their efforts. So that's number one. The second thing is that we still have the hope, specifically encouraged by the discussions in the European Commission, but also in the European Parliament over the last couple of months with regard to binding national targets, that this may be still a topic that can come in, even if it might come in probably to the back door. The idea could be, for example, to propose indicative targets to include this somewhere so that they are then reflected in the national energy and climate plans. This would be, for example, to have something to make member states more responsible for this. Here, what we're going to do is that we will hopefully come soon forward with a study that shows how the indicative targets for member states will change depending on the various scenarios on renewable energy and energy efficiency, just to give them a little bit a better idea of what they are then signing up to. A very important issue that certainly needs to be tackled is here permitting and administrative processes. They need to become much more faster. It can't be that, for example, creating a wind park in Germany is still using 5 years. This must go much faster. We hope that here there are already some improvements mentioned, but I mean here specifically the member states need also to make some efforts here. We have, for example, some ideas to put, for example, certain committees with them that already prior or at the beginning of a project proposal help to shorten the process by solving, for example, potential conflicts with regard to biodiversity or social acceptance. Might be a possibility to look into it, but nevertheless, these permitting processes need to become much faster. And probably here talking about, we know within the Green Deal that we have on the one side biodiversity, nature legislation on the one side, and on the other side, for example, here decarbonization. And I mean, here we need to see how we can reach a balance. This is probably not so much an aim or a goal here for the revision of the Renewable Energy Directive, but just to take into consideration that we need to reach a kind of like a balance, or like to make also an amendment with the EU nature legislation, be it the Water Framework Directive, bird habitat directives, etc. And we need to give a much more clearer priority for renewable energy. That's number one. And I mean, independent now of this is we with HEREF are very much worried that by the time the new Renewable Energy Directive will enter into force, we will have lost quite, let's say, valuable years. Probably in effect, we will have only 6 or 7 years to implement it until 2030. So this is why we also call on governments and the European Commission to come up with a kind of like fast track implementation, or probably even to start already to review the NECPs much earlier as currently be envisaged. Thank you.
Thank you, Dirk. Jorgo, what are your 3 main topics?
First main topic is not to water down. I might have said we are okay with the ambition, but we also would warn again to water down, and that's very important. So no watering down of the ambition. The second has been mentioned is the guarantee of origin scheme. So as hydrogen will become a global commodity, and as renewable energy will be imported, and Portugal, congratulations for that, was one of the first to auction, so to say, renewably produced hydrogen globally, and this was successful. So this needs to have clear certification schemes. We don't want that fossil energy might be traded via the back door. Also for no carbon there will be, and there should be certification scheme, but first and foremost for renewably produced hydrogen. Tracing, tracking needs to be clear and transparently done. There is an ISO standard already foreseen, which could be the basis for that. We had a conference, a side event at Glasgow, where we discussed how this can be done on the basis of this ISO standard. We would also wish that NGOs would be included into these discussions, because at the moment NGOs are not part of this standardization process. And the third point is the delegated act. We are all in favor of additionality. We are supporting, so to say, the upscale of additional renewable energy in order to use then the hydrogen, the electricity also for hydrogen, and this should go hand in hand. The only problem, and we are waiting, of course, like everybody, for the so-called delegated act on red to clarify this. The only problem is it should not create an unnecessary bottleneck for investors, because the way it is designed right now, it foresees every 15 minutes a check, a proof that it's from an additional renewable energy source. That's not needed. What we need is to see that member states can scale up the use of electricity for hydrogen at the same, or even at the higher level, they would scale up renewable energy infrastructure. That's the 3 points. Thanks again very much.
Thank you very much, Jorgo. And it's important that you mention additionality, because it's one of the things that we need to put in the proper direction. Otherwise, we will be stuck and not do anything, and we continue to discuss additionality, and we need to sort that out. Remy, your turn now.
Thank you. Well, I don't have three. I actually only have two, and they are innovation and the cost of money. Innovation, because I touched on it earlier, and this is a position that is shared by 9 European associations in and around renewables, including some of our panelists here. We believe we need a sub-target for innovation. The latest European Commission analysis show that the member states have not pledged enough action on innovation in their national energy and climate plans. And I will exclude Portugal from this, because Portugal is actually the good student here. Specifically in wave, Portugal has a vision of 30 megawatts of wave energy by 2025 and 70 by 2030. Which obviously is small compared to wind, but for the level of the development of the technology is pretty good. And I think it's also the reason why the first ever factory manufacturing wave energy devices will be set in Portugal, near Porto, by one of our companies, Core Power. Now, the Renewable Energy Directive incentivizes large-scale deployment. This is very clear, and it needs to. Absolutely clear, but it does not encourage enough the development of emerging renewables. So we're proposing a few amendments to remedy the situation and make the directive fit for the 55 and also fit for climate neutrality. So that's the first point. The second, cost of money. To put pilot farms in the water for wave and tidal at the moment, but it's very similar for any emerging technology. If banks don't know you, they consider you as a risk. Not necessarily from a money perspective, you might have a good business case, etc., but they don't know your technology. They don't know if it's going to break down tomorrow. So for us, the cost of money is about 50% of the cost of a project, 50%, half of it. So we want to be in a situation where financing projects doesn't mean financing bank benefits, but it does mean financing technological development. So to do that, we need European, and we already have quite a few European programs that are improving and allowing access for emerging technologies to pots of cash that are either at reduced cost or that are facilitated access. We need that at national level as well. We need visibility on the kilowatt hour production at national level as well. And for this, we propose two things. We propose to mandate the EIB, for starters, to invest more, be most risk-friendly, and invest more in emerging technologies. And also the creation of an insurance and guarantee fund, which would cover a number of pilot farms across the board. And we think these two things are essential, essentially. So improved access to capital, lowering the cost of money, and market visibility for emerging renewables via a sub-target for innovation. And there are solutions within Article 3, Article 9, to name them, of the directive on how to put that, integrate this target for innovation, integrate also, and Giles might probably like that as well, the objectives of the offshore renewable strategy, which the European Commission has put forward in November, which calls on wind and tidal and wave to be developed at a higher pace than they are currently. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jaime. Before I pass to Walburga, bankability of your technology is going to be critical. And in my opinion, we need guarantees for technology risk and performance risk that might actually balance if anything comes up and all your financing doesn't get into the default point. So yes, I agree that you guys should fight for that with the European Commission to put a scheme in place, a financial scheme that will allow for new technologies that do not have yet commercial deployment bankability to be able to be bankable because they've been worked and they went through the proof of concept. And so that should work also for electrolyzers in a sense. Walburga, it is now your turn. I'm going to kindly ask you to your 2 to 3 minutes because otherwise we'll not be able to finish on time. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, I will try to be as brief as possible. Originally, we had 6 asks, and we were very happy that the European Commission already took on board 3 of them, at least to a very large extent, which is permitting, also very important for the solar sector. So they've done what they could. Now it's on the member states to improve and get faster. Hydrogen, renewable hydrogen, I think it's a good start. And PPAs and guarantees of origin, we're very happy to be looking into a more harmonized framework when it comes to geo, very important for businesses to source renewables. It doesn't surprise you probably that our main ask remains the 45% goal for renewables. And the 2 other ones are related to the 45% goal because they should make the 45 goal possible. So they are more or less the solution which we are proposing in order to get to the 45%. One thing is there's a huge potential for renewables for commercial and industrial sector. So the potential we are estimating is around about 400 gigawatt by 2030. So this potential needs to be harvested. So what we are asking for is a favorable framework for big prosumers. So we have a very good framework for households, for prosumers, which are residential below 30 kilowatt. But we also need a very good framework for large prosumers. And the second thing which should get us to 45% is to use the huge potential we have on our European roofs. Only 10% of our roofs are used for electricity production, 90%. And that's according to very, very conservative estimates, around about 25% of Europe's current electricity consumption, which is not used today and should be used. So what we are calling for is really to take up in the Renewables Directive a requirement to use these roofs, use these spaces which are not used for anything else. It's already a very good start to have an indicative target of 49% of use in renewables in buildings, but we want to see stronger requirements in the Renewables Directive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Walburga. Giles, last but not least, your turn now.
Thank you, Pedro. Number 1, guarantees of origin. Jorgo and Walburga have both mentioned this. The Commission got it right, but their excellent proposal is under attack in the Council. It's very important that member states should apply the Commission's principle that they always give guarantees of origin to renewables projects, including renewables hydrogen, and they should not have the loophole which currently exists, that they can withhold guarantees of origin from projects that are receiving public financial support. Number 2, the directive should have a definition of combined renewables projects. By this, I mean combined wind, solar, or wind, solar storage projects. These are really good things because they offer very firm and reliable energy output. But today across Europe, we don't in most countries have a legal base for regulating such projects. Having such a definition and a legal base would really help with their permitting and in particular getting the grid connections for them. Number 3, we need a definition in the directive of these hybrid offshore wind farms. Those are the wind farms that have grid connections to 2 or more countries. The EU today is inclined to treat these assets purely as interconnectors, but they are more than that. They are both transmission and generation assets, and they should be treated in their own right as a separate asset category. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Giles. We are heading towards our last question. I'm going to please ask you to try and stick to 2.5 minutes each. And the question is, state aid will play a major role contributing to the implementation of the green energy transition. Which are the 3 main points that you consider to be lacking in the current state aid guidelines in order to secure the right investment, tenor, and weighted average cost of capital, and incentivize a socially, economically, financial, environmental sustainable transition with a proper balance between the different technologies, given the different applicability, nature, scale, and cost structures? I will start with Dirk. Please, Dirk, try to make your 2 minutes so we are able also at the end to take some questions from the audience. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. The flaws of the current state aid guidelines that we personally see is that member states should normally be free to decide, just like in other policy areas, through which kind of system they would like to grant support in order to find the most efficient pathway to achieve their renewable energy targets. They should not be obliged, as in the current directive, to use auctioning systems. Tender auction systems, they certainly might work quite well. However, we have seen in the past that we made different experiences on the one side with overbidding. So the price resulting from the tenders is too high, which means we're going to end up with an overcompensation. But I mean also in particular with underbidding, the price is too low and consequently the projects will never be built. So this is certainly something which has some flaws. In addition to that is that specifically if you would like to promote the new actors that are sort of like now became these prominent roles in the Renewable Energy Directive, like, for example, energy cooperatives, energy communities, then in this case, tenders and auctions very often pose a very big problem. So here we have these, so this is why we need specific schemes, either in auction schemes or tender schemes, but preferably some other kind of support systems for renewable energy cooperatives, energy communities, but I mean also small and medium-sized enterprise, because in most cases these kind of actors cannot compete in auctions, specifically not compete with large actors, simply because of the large administrative efforts that they need to undertake, the financial risks that they need to take, but also due to their size, their economy of scale might make them, of course, less competitive. In this case, of course, in the tender, then more expensive than the offer from large actors. So this is why we would like to have them separately dealt with in thing. However, if we're going to say now here, we hope that well, we hope and we also request that the whole state aid discussion should be actually left aside, because I mean, if you just simply think that we would reach these very high renewable energy target, we need to see this, or in our argumentation, we would like to see this as a kind of like overall societal effort. And consequently, as this is really a change of the whole energy system, it basically means that this is like a general policy obligation of the state and of the society as such, and consequently the support frameworks legally should not fall under any kind of state aid considerations. Generally, if you're going to look at the EU treaty from a legal perspective, Directive, the treaty generally prohibits state aid unless it is justified by reasons of general economic development. So consequently, we hope we really hope that state aid is then not necessary here for renewable energies anymore, but fall outside these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Dirk. Jorgo.
Thank you very much. It's 4 points, but it's less than 2 minutes. The first point is we need also to have, other than just CAPEX, OPEX being part of state aid. Carbon contracts for difference are a very good point. The second issue is electrolyzer manufacturing. At the moment is not foreseen. This is crazy. So we want that also electrolyzer manufacturing would be in the scope for state aid. Third point, there should be a link of electricity bidding, not only to producing electricity, but also to hydrogen production. And the fourth short point is that cross-border mechanisms for the production of hydrogen should also be part of it. That's it, 4 small little points. Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much, Jorgo. So, Giles, can you share with us your vision on this?
Thank you, Pedro. Number one, it should be clear in the guidelines that technology-specific auctions are fine, and it should be easy for member states to justify why they want to do technology-specific auctions. Number two, storage should be eligible for state aid. The current text suggests that electricity produced as a result of a storage facility should not be getting state aid. This is a nonsense because those sort of projects need de-risking still. They need public financial support. Number three, renewable energy generators should be compensated in the event of curtailment. The electricity regulation clearly allows this. It's only just been agreed, but paragraph 102 of the draft guidelines suggests that operators should not be compensated for curtailment. This is extremely unhelpful, and it's inconsistent with very recently agreed legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Giles. Walburga, please, the floor is yours.
So I start with my second point because it's referring to a point Giles made, very important. Storage is very, very important and should be recognized. So renewable electricity going into storage should also come out as renewable electricity again and should be supported. Very important point. Second point, I've mentioned the huge potential of roofs to produce electricity. Using European roofs should not be made more difficult. What we see in the proposal today is that the tendering threshold should be lowered. And I'm not going into the details. So lowering thresholds is going completely against trends we see also in member states which want to facilitate using roofs. So this should be avoided. And my third point is that indeed tenders have been very valuable driving down the costs of renewables. But we do think that going forward, it is very important also to leave room for innovation and also leave the possibility to member states not to only have price criteria in tenders, but to also acknowledge innovation, for example, have tenders as an example of renewables plus storage and acknowledge very important innovative developments, so to really upgrade and make this development much more faster. So it seems that DG Competition is very open on that, but we still need to have more clarity and confirmation that non-price criteria going forward would also be possible.
Thank you very much, Walburga. Patrick, your turn now, please.
Thank you very much, Pedro. So actually for storage, most of it has been said already by my colleagues. I'm very happy, don't need to say a lot. But still, I want to add that, and hoping that Alejandro is still there to take some notes, that this is basically under 4.1, that we need absolutely to mention energy storage, and that energy storage should be allowed to be supported also in the integration of renewables. This is making the system more cost efficient, and we cannot ignore this. Regarding the second point we want to add is about the security of supply. The section 4.8 is looking at requirements for member states on how they need to report on security of supply. We believe you should not only report on this, you should also report on the required shares on energy storage deployed or currently planned to be deployed, and the measures to encourage storage to participate in the energy storage markets. Because this sharing of information creates the best practices, creates others to follow and to open up their markets. And finally, in the sake of time, the last point is for us that we would like to have the energy storage system in buildings highlighted more, because it is not only important, obviously, to have energy savings when you talk about buildings and supporting buildings, but also to optimize energy demand of the consumers so that it's compatible with the generation or the generation forecast. So we need to create flexibility in the system and not only save energy. This is the same for industrial consumers, obviously. And the last point I want to support what was said before, we cannot only talk about CapEx support, we need absolutely to have OpEx also supported, because energy storage system can be quite expensive to operate, but the added value is there. And if we don't start to deploy them now, we will not be able to kick it up as we need to get the 2030 or 2050 targets. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Patrick. That was interesting from your point of view of storage. Remy, your turn now, please.
Thank you, Pedro. From our perspective, I have mostly one point, but I want to start by thanking the Commission for the work they've done on this. 10, 15 years ago, when we were talking to DG Competition, it was a much tougher discussion because the case for renewable was much harder to do. And today, when I look at the future guidelines, they are already a great step forward. Now, there is one amelioration from our perspective that we can make to them, but they should already facilitate a great deployment of renewables, more simplification, and greater flexibility for renewable projects. So specifically, the rule we had in the past of funding thresholds, which was a dread in our sector, because to build a demonstration project, you need 60, 70, sometimes 95% public money. It could be equity, it could be debt, it doesn't have to be a grant all the time. But there is this need, and the funding thresholds who have now disappeared were preventing that. So the last rule that we would require as a last improvement with that small demonstration project, I'm talking a few megawatts here, like less than 10, they're not a threat to competition. Obviously, 10 megawatts on the current multi-100 gigawatts electricity grid is not a threat to competition. That those small projects don't need to go through the same approval process as multi-gigawatt offshore wind farms or solar park utility scale. Like at the moment, it's still like that in the text. This needs to change, otherwise we will. Obviously, the weight of a procedure of that magnitude on a 10 megawatt project is going to be exponentially more superior than if you have a large project. It's just a matter of relationship. So if you can remove that, I'll honestly be quite happy about the future guidelines for innovative technologies. And I hope Alessandro made it back into the session in the listening part so he can take that on board. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Remy. Jean-Marc, we'll close this question with you.
Yeah, thank you. 3 points as well. First, no new category of renewables. In the proposal for the new state aid, we see, and we were shocked by the proposal of having a zero air pollution renewables that is clearly targeting bioenergy. So it's a kind of arbitrary, there is no definition, in fact, and this is somehow opening a kind of Pandora box. We all know that all renewables have some kind of environmental impact that are regulated in other European, national, or regional legislation. So we should not we should be coherent with the Renewable Energy Directive and not create other kinds of renewables. Second, for bioenergy, also the support to existing plants sometimes makes sense because we have operating costs that are higher than for wind or sun panels and PV panels, for example, because we have fuel, we have a lot of jobs created. And in some cases, there is a risk of recarbonization that some energy users might find it more easy to go back to gas And on top of this, with the sustainability criteria linked to biomass, we might frighten them. So support to existing plants should be an option. And third and last point, the bioenergy offers really an amazing opportunity to capture and store CO2. This is really, with the photosynthesis, biomass can capture CO2 at a very low cost. So if we want this to be a key technology by 2050, we have to start as soon as possible to finance this pilot projects at this stage and develop further this technology. So including bioenergy CCS in the state aid is a must. Thank you.
Jean-Marc, thank you very much. Thank you to the 7 of you. I'm going to kindly ask you to remain with us. We still have Christian for the presentation, and I'm expecting some questions from the audience through Slido. So please bear with us for a couple of minutes more. Can we try and you go ahead?
Thank you, Pedro. Right now, thank you for your participation on this panel. Right now, we are going back a bit and try again to watch the presentation from Christian Foduck from the Renewable Hydrogen Coalition. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Very happy to speak today and having the honor on behalf of the Renewable Hydrogen Coalition at the Portugal Renewable Energy Summit. Thank you, Pedro, for the invitation. And I would love to be with you, all of you, the great panel, many of you I know, in Lisbon, right now here in Glasgow at the COP26 and the Sustainable Innovation Forum. And I know in Portugal, as a leader in the hydrogen space, it's a very good combination to combine the European vision with the Portuguese strategy. Let me share the presentation from Renewable Hydrogen Coalition, and also that give my regards from François Paquet, the Impact Director. So renewable electricity is the best hydrogen strategy, obviously. It's the #1 input factor. And the question is the new framework for renewables, is it sufficient to meet the ambitious targets we have in Europe? And then in Portugal, we talk about the 2.5 gigawatts tomorrow for Portugal. But in Europe, we need a strong voice for renewable hydrogen industry in Europe. This is the reason that Solar Power Europe and Wind Europe and Breakthrough Energy have put themselves together and combined an important list of stakeholders to join forces in order to build up a high-level interdisciplinary network of innovators, investors, entrepreneurs, industrial off-takers, and corporate. We want to inform about the policy debate with concrete proposals for the scaling up and market uptake of renewable hydrogen. And last but not least, we want to position Europe as a global leader in renewable hydrogen. It's a big opportunity. We have the experience of being leading in the initial phase of new technologies, but we also want to make something sustainable for our industry to keep also this leadership when it goes into industrialization. As you can see here, an important group of stakeholders have joined forces, and more are joining the coalition. The reality today is that 96% of hydrogen is fossil fuel based. Less than 4% is renewable based hydrogen. And the question is, how do we change that as fast as possible? We've seen that hydrogen is in fact the solution for some sectors which otherwise cannot be successful. And also, we have a big dependency on fossil imports. A big amount of our investments go still into fossil fuel based rather than into the renewables. In fact, looking at emissions, 830 million tons of CO2 are emitted per year for fossil fuel hydrogen production. This is equivalent to the combined emissions of the UK and Indonesia together as a total. Another big number is the 60 billion euro, which every year, sorry, jumped on my presentation here, now I'm back. This is Europe's yearly spending in imported natural gas, also used for fossil-based hydrogen production. So the level of investment or support we want to give for hydrogen is not so big compared to what we do already all the time into the fossil fuel based. So there is a chance to divert the right way. Also, we believe we can reduce the dependency from imports and also going the blue hydrogen direction is a critical path because it still keeps dependency on these imports and still has the CO2 topic not completely solved. Not saying that there isn't a reality with blue hydrogen, but the focus and the support and the subsidies really must look into the sustainable long-term solution with renewable energy. Renewable hydrogen is in fact considered the missing link. We want to bring Europe's vast wind and solar potential everywhere. And if you look on the top, you have solar, wind as the main renewables which can scale easily. And the upper route is the electrification, transport, industry, mobility, buildings. And wherever we can do energy efficiency measures, we can do electrification. This is obviously a very efficient path to go. But what is about hydrogen? Hydrogen can exactly solve the sectors we don't know exactly before how to do this. We want to produce carbon-free energy with technology made in Europe to decarbonize hard to electrify sectors, and it will create sustainable jobs and products. And there is so many interesting use cases, aviation, the shipping industry, and obviously the industry. And also we shouldn't think about hydrogen only as the pure hydrogen element and then use it as a hydrogen, but with hydrogen as a molecule, we can do many more products, derivatives, ammonia, methanol, or even going into synthetic fuels, the so-called refundables, renewable fuels of non-biologic origin. And also here the O2, just to mention, when we do electrolysis, there is byproducts to use also in industry or the part of the non-efficiency, which is the heat, to also use this heat is a good idea. So there are many potential possibilities, and on the longer term, hydrogen is obviously an energy carrier and a storage possibility. So we look into hydrogen also to increase Europe's resilience. Well, this chart really impressively shows that we are at the beginning on the one hand side of the renewable hydrogen in terms of dollars per kilograms or euro per kilogram, but already right now the projects which are suggested show the big and huge potential when scaling up. And today the blue hydrogen, in fact, from natural gas with the carbon capture and storage is on a lower level, but already within this decade, this will be changed. And the reduction potential is much higher on the green hydrogen. Well, we wanted to take away the colors. Let's call it again the renewable hydrogen compared to the ones which work with carbon capture and storage. So here is the path to really support, because this is a really sustainable path on the long term. It's driven by cheaper electrolyzers and by the more and more becoming renewable electricity becoming competitive. So there is a strong support on the targets through the renewable energy directives, 50% of hydrogen used by industry to be renewable by 2030, 2.6% renewable share in fuels for transport by 2030. Also, especially on the alternative fuels and the corresponding infrastructure, very important, 150 kilometers for all the stations with a minimum capacity of 2 tons per day. And also the refuel aviation, the solution for especially the long-distance aviation. No way to do it without some synthetic renewable fuels, but in general also having all fuels used in the meantime until infrastructure is changed, flights and airplanes changed. Also a blending helps to decarbonize. So we have ambition targets to support the projects. So we have to support the risking of the projects, bridging the green premium. Initially, we have to look into state aid revision to unlock and accelerate private investment to make it really a self-running business for developers, for investors. We need to work on the carbon contracts for difference, government-supported contract for difference, reducing the levies imposed on renewable electricity to reduce the electrolyzer OPEX, and also the preferential tax rate for renewable hydrogen over low-carbon hydrogen. We have additionally the challenge of additionality. It's obviously clear we don't want to take with the hydrogen away electricity which is planned for electrification. This must be additional renewable energy, and this needs an extra effort to focus and have these resources available. And with that, we have to unleash, in fact, the electrolyzer's potential in providing system benefits, work and use the curtailed electricity as additional opportunity, and also go into the storage topic together with the hydrogen, fuel cells, and also we know about large-scale storage possible, about seasonality. And also, very, very important, the permitting bottleneck across Europe is very important. So last but not least, making the bridge now to you in Portugal, the unique potential to become and be a European champion. I mean, by the activities already last year, Portugal already has positioned itself very well. There is this great wind and solar potential, access to strategic infrastructure, ports, grids, locations, facilitating the export. It needs funding, renewable hydrogen, and it's a unique opportunity to modernize and reduce emissions of hard-to-electrify sectors and reduce natural gas imports. So I'm sure we will have a great discussion. Best greetings from here, and looking forward to talk to you in person. Bye, everybody.
Thank you all, thank you to Christian, and thank you to all the participants on the debate prior to Christian's intervention. Agora vou passar a falar em português. Em seguida temos um painel, a seguir é um coffee break de 15 minutos, temos um painel dedicado à evolução do preço da eletricidade no mercado ibérico. Será um painel de debate que será precedido por duas intervenções presenciais, duas apresentações presenciais, aqui diretamente do auditório. Obrigado e vemos daqui a 15 minutos. Até já.